Hi guys, tonight we drift quietly into the true story of the mountain men and the coldest winter the high peaks had ever seen. The sun is sinking behind the big rocks. The air is turning very cold. It feels like ice against your cheeks. The wind is coming off the fields like a cold river. You find every gap in your clothes. You can hear the dry grass snapping under your boots. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you want to let me know where you are listening from and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing those little snapshots of the world. Now dim the lights and let the story begin. The smell is the first thing you notice. It is not the smell of the pine trees or the smell of the damp earth near the water. It is something else. It is a heavy smell. It is the smell of the sky when it is getting ready to drop a great weight of white snow onto the world. You are standing on the bank of the Green River. This place is in a land that people will one day call Wyoming, but for now, it is just the wild. It is a place of big mountains and long grass. There are no roads here. There are no towns. There is only the sound of the water moving over the grey stones and the sound of your own breath in the morning air. Your name is Elijah Morgan. You are only 23 years old. You have spent 2 years out here in the high country. You have learned how to hunt and how to trap the beaver in the cold streams. You have learned how to keep your fire going when the wind tries to blow it out. You have been doing well, but today something feels wrong. The air feels thick, like you are breathing in something heavy. It is September in the year 1836. Usually, the sun is still warm this time of year. Usually, the grass is still green in the valleys. But this morning, the grass is covered in a thin coat of white frost. It looks like tiny diamonds scattered across the ground. When you step on it, the grass makes a sharp, snapping sound. You look at the river. The water is very clear and very dark. It moves slowly here, swirling around the roots of the old willow trees. You can see the small fish darting between the rocks. The water is so cold that it makes your feet ache, even through your thick leather boots. You reach down and touch the water. It feels like needles against your skin. This is the water that comes from the high peaks. It is the water of the mountains, and it tells you that the warm days are over. You stand there for a long time, just watching the water move. The world is very quiet. There is no sound of birds this morning. They've already started to fly away to the south. The only sound is the water and the soft huff of the horses nearby. The camp is waking up behind you. You can hear the other men moving around. There are about 30 men in this group. It is a big group for the mountains. This is Jim Bridger's brigade. Jim Bridger is a man who knows these mountains better than anyone. He's a strong man with a face that looks like it was carved out of the mountain rocks. He has survived many things. He once had an arrowhead stuck in his back for 3 years. He is not a man who gets scared easily. But this morning, even Jim looks worried. He is sitting by the fire, talking to a scout. The scout is a man from the Crow people. He's lived here all his life. He knows the signs of the earth. You walk back toward the fire. The smell of the wood smoke is nice. It is a warm smell that makes you feel safe for a moment. You pick up your metal coffee pot. This is your most prized thing. It is made of thin tin, and it is black from the soot of 100 fires. You fill it with river water and set it on the hot coals. You watch the water start to bubble. You add a small handful of coffee beans. The beans are hard and brown. You had to pay a lot of money for them at the gathering last month. The coffee is weak because you are trying to make it last, but the smell is wonderful. It smells like home. It smells like a kitchen in a house with a real floor and a real roof. You pour the coffee into a tin cup. The cup is hot, and you have to hold it with your sleeve so you do not burn your hand. You take a sip. The liquid is hot and bitter. It warms your throat and your chest. You stand there, holding the cup, feeling the steam rise up against your face. The steam feels soft and wet. It is the only warm thing in the world right now. You look over at Jim Bridger. He is still talking to the Crow Scout. The scout is pointing at the mountains in the north. His hand is steady. He is pointing at the clouds that are gathering around the tall peaks. The clouds are a dark, heavy grey colour. They look like they are full of lead. The Crow Scout says that the animals are behaving strangely. He says the beaver are growing very thick fur. He says the elk are already moving down from the high woods. He says the squirrels are busy gathering more nuts than he has ever seen. These are the signs. The earth is getting ready for a big sleep. The scout says this winter will be a killing winter. He says it will be a winter that does not end when it is supposed to. You listen to his words, and you feel a small shiver go down your back. It is not just from the cold wind, it is a feeling deep inside your bones. You look at your horse. He is a strong animal with a coat the color of autumn leaves. He is busy chewing on a bit of dry grass. He does not know about the heavy clouds. He does not know about the killing winter. He only knows that the sun is coming up and he has work to do. You feel a bit jealous of the horse. You wish you only had to think about the grass and the water. But you are a man, and you have to think about the months ahead. You have to think about how you will stay warm when the sun disappears. You have to think about how you will find food when the ground is buried deep in white. Jim Bridger calls your name. Morgan, he says. His voice is deep and rough. Come over here. You walk to the fire and stand near him. The heat of the flames feels good on your legs. Jim looks at you with his sharp eyes. He tells you that we are moving north. We are going to the Yellowstone country. He says we need to find a place to stay before the big snow hits. He says we need to be clever and we need to be fast. You nod your head. You do not say anything. In the mountains, you learn that it is better to listen than to talk. You look back at the river one last time. The sun is higher now, but it does not feel warm. The light is pale and thin. It does not have the strength of the summer sun. The river is still moving, still cold, still indifferent to the men standing on its banks. You dump the rest of your coffee onto the fire. The coals hiss and a cloud of white steam rises up. It disappears into the cold air almost instantly. You turn away from the water and go to your horse. It is time to pack your things. It is time to leave the green river behind. The long journey is starting, and the heavy air is waiting for you to move. Everything you own is in 2 leather bags on your horse's back. You check your rifle. It is a long, heavy gun. You keep it clean and dry. It is the only thing that keeps you safe from the big bears and the hungry wolves. You check your powder horn and your bag of lead balls. You have enough to last for a while, but you will have to be careful. You cannot waste a single shot. You reach into your bag and feel the soft leather cover of your mother's Bible. She gave it to you when you left Missouri. It is a small book, and the pages are very thin. You cannot read very well, but you like to hold the book. It makes you feel like someone is watching over you. It makes you feel like you are not alone in this big, empty land. The rest of the men are mounting their horses now. The camp is full of the sound of leather creaking and men shouting to one another. The smoke from the fires is being chased away by the wind. You climb onto your horse. The leather saddle is cold and hard. You wrap your coat tight around your middle. You look at the line of men stretching out ahead of you. They are all bundled in furs and wool. They look like a line of dark shadows moving across the frost. Jim Bridger leads the way. He does not look back. He just rides toward the north, toward the clouds, toward the mountains that are waiting to swallow you up. You kick your horse softly and you follow him into the grey morning. The sun stays low in the sky as you ride. It is a pale, weak light that does not warm your back. You listen to the sound of your horse's feet on the dry earth. It is a steady sound. Step, crunch, step, crunch. The horse's hooves break the frozen crust of the ground, and a little bit of dust rises up. The dust is cold and grey. It smells like old rocks. You watch the back of the man in front of you. He is wearing a heavy coat made of buffalo skin. The dark hair of the coat ripples in the wind like the grass in a meadow. You find yourself watching the way the coat moves. It is a slow, rhythmic movement that almost makes you feel sleepy, but you cannot sleep. You must stay awake and watch the trail. Your horse's ears are twitching back and forth. He is listening to the sounds of the wilderness. Maybe he hears a bird in the distance, or the sound of the wind moving through the dry branches of a bush. You reach down and pat his neck. His skin is warm, and his hair is thick for the winter. You feel the strong muscles moving under your hand. It is good to have a horse. Without a horse, a man is nothing in these mountains. A horse carries your food, your blankets, and your future. On the back of your horse, tucked inside a leather wrap, are your beaver pelts. A pelt is the skin of the animal with the fur still on it. You have worked very hard to get them. You had to stand in freezing water up to your waist to set your traps. You had to use a heavy iron trap. This trap is a micro-history detail you know well. It has 2 strong springs and a flat plate in the middle. When a beaver steps on the plate, the jaws of the trap snap shut with a loud clack. You have to carry these heavy traps on your back, and they are cold and sharp against your skin. After you catch a beaver, you have to skin it very carefully. You use a small, sharp knife to take the fur away from the meat. Then you stretch the skin on a hoop made of willow wood until it is dry and tight like a drum. You call these finished skins plues. A good plue is soft and heavy. If you run your fingers through the fur, it feels like silk. It is very thick to keep the beaver warm in the icy water. In the middle of the fur, there are tiny little hairs that act like a coat. This is what the people back east want. They take this fur and they turn it into felt. Then they make tall, shiny hats for men in big cities like London and New York. For a long time, these hats were the most important thing a man could own. If you had a beaver hat, it meant you were rich. It meant you were a gentleman. Because of those hats, you can make a lot of money out here. But word came to the camp during the last gathering. The news was not good. The fashion is changing. In places like London and Paris, men have decided they do not want beaver hats anymore. They want hats made of silk. Silk comes from a little worm far away in a land called China. It is very smooth and very shiny. It is not as strong as beaver fur, but it is the new, pretty thing. Because of this, the price of your beaver pelts is going down. A few years ago, a good pelt was worth $6 or $7. Now, you are lucky if you get 4 or 5. You think about this as you ride. It seems strange that a man in a city thousands of miles away can change your life. This man has never seen a mountain. He has never felt the bite of the frost on his toes. He has never heard the howl of a wolf in the dark. He just sits in a fancy room and decides that he likes silk better than fur. And because he decides that, you have to work harder. You have to catch more beaver just to buy the same amount of flour and coffee. It does not seem fair, but that is the way of the world. The mountains are big, but they are connected to those tiny rooms far away by a long invisible string. You need to collect at least 60 pelts before the next summer. If you can do that, you will have about $300. To you, $300 is a mountain of money. It is enough to go back to Missouri and buy a piece of land. You can see it in your mind when you close your eyes. You see a green field with a fence around it. You see a small house made of sawn boards with glass in the windows. You see a cow standing under an apple tree. You see a woman standing in the doorway, waving to you as you come home from the fields. That is the dream that keeps you moving. That is why you stand in the cold water. That is why you sleep on the hard ground. The wind picks up. It comes from the north now, and it carries the scent of the big ice. You pull your collar up around your ears. The wool is scratchy, but it helps. You look at the sky. The clouds are lower now. They are thick and white, like a heavy wool blanket. The sun is just a dimmed low behind them. It looks like a candle burning behind a piece of thin cloth. You know that the snow is coming. You can feel it in the way the air presses against your chest. It is a heavy feeling. You look out at the horizon. The mountains are getting taller as you ride north. Their peaks are covered in old snow that never melts. They look like giant teeth biting into the grey sky. Everything out here is so big. It makes you feel very small. You are just one man on one horse, moving through a land that does not care if you are there or not. The mountains were here long before your grandfather was born, and they will be here long after you are gone. They are beautiful, but they are also very lonely. There is a moment of atmospheric silence as the brigade stops to rest the horses. No one speaks. The only sound is the wind whistling through the dry sagebrush. It sounds like a low, sad song. You look at the man beside you. His face is covered in a thick brown beard, and there is dust in his eyebrows. He looks like he is made of dirt and leather. He is staring at the mountains too. You wonder if he is thinking about silk hats, or if he is thinking about a warm fire. You take a deep breath. The air is so cold it hurts your nose. It smells clean and sharp. You think about the beaver down in the valleys. They are busy right now. They are building their houses out of sticks and mud. They are storing up branches to eat during the winter. They are getting ready, just like you are. You feel a sort of connection to them. You are both trying to survive the same cold. You are both trying to make it through to the spring. And the historical fact of the matter is that by the late 1830s, the beaver was almost gone from many streams. Men had trapped them so much that there were very few left. This, combined with the new silk hats, meant that the life of the mountain man was coming to an end. You do not know this yet, but you can feel it. You can feel it. You can feel that the world is changing. The night shift of the fur trapper is almost over. But for now, you still have traps to set. You still have a dream of a farm in Missouri. Jim Bridger raises his hand. It is time to move again. You kick your horse softly. Step, crunch, step, crunch. The rhythm starts again. The line of men moves forward into the grey light. You reach back and touch the leather wrap that holds your pelts. They are still there. They are your ticket home. You just have to keep them safe. You just have to keep yourself alive. The clouds are getting darker, and the first tiny flake of snow falls onto your glove. It is small and white and perfect. It stays there for a second, then it melts into a tiny drop of water. The winter is no longer coming. It is here. The line of horses comes to a slow stop. You pull on your leather reins, and your horse slows down, his head dipping low. You can hear him huffing. Every time he breathes out, a thick cloud of white steam comes from his nose. It looks like white smoke from a small fire. You watch the steam disappear into the cold air. The wind is stronger now. It is a sharp wind that feels like it is trying to peel the skin from your nose. You reach up with your gloved hand and rub your face. Your skin feels stiff and cold, like a piece of dry leather. Ahead of you, Jim Bridger has stopped his horse. He is looking at a man who has just ridden out from behind a stand of yellowing trees. This man is a Crow Scout. His name is Two Horses. He is a man who has lived in these high places for 40 winters. His face is very brown and has many lines in it, like the bark of an old oak tree. He sits on his horse as if he were part of the animal. He wears a heavy coat made of elk skin, and his hair is long and dark, tied back with a strip of red cloth. You watch Jim Bridger get down from his horse. His movements are a bit slow today. You remember that he has an old wound in his back, where an iron arrowhead once lived for years. It makes him stiff when the cold starts to bite. He walks over to the scout. You and the other men stay back. You do not want to get in the way of a big man like Bridger. You lean forward on your saddle, trying to hear what they are saying. The scout is not moving much. He is speaking in a low, quiet voice. He points with one finger toward the high peaks and then down toward the valley floor. Bridger listens with his head tilted to one side. Usually, Bridger is a man who laughs a lot. He tells loud stories and makes everyone feel safe. But today, he is not laughing. He is not even smiling. His mouth is a thin, straight line. He looks worried. When a man like Jim Bridger looks worried, you know that the world is about to become very difficult. The scout tells Bridger about the signs of the earth. He says that the beaver are not just growing thick fur, they are growing fur that is twice as thick as it was last year. He says the elk are not just moving south, they are moving in great herds, running as if something is chasing them, and the squirrels the scout says they are hoarding so many nuts that their tree holes are bursting. In the mountains, the animals know things that men do not. They can feel the deep cold coming long before the first snowflake hits the ground. Bridger turns around and looks at the brigade. He looks at you and the 30 other men. His eyes are sharp, like the eyes of a hawk. He tells the group what the scout has said. The Crow are leaving, Bridger says. His voice carries through the cold air. They are moving their whole village down to the lowlands. They say this winter will be the worst one in 40 years. They say the snow will be so deep it will swallow a horse whole. You feel a knot of fear in your stomach. You look down at your possibles bag. This is a small leather pouch that hangs from your belt. It is a microhistory detail that every trapper carries. Inside, you have the things that make life possible. You have your flint and steel for making fire. You have a few lead balls for your gum. You have a small tin of grease for your boots. You touch the soft leather of the bag. It is a small comfort, but it feels good to know you have your tools. Bridger says we must trap smart. He says we cannot just wander around the mountains and hope for the best. We need to find a place to stay or winter ground. We need to find it early, before the snow gets too high to move. He says we will go toward the Yellowstone country. There are places there with wood for fires and water that does not always freeze. The scout turns his horse and rides away. He does not say goodbye. He just disappears back into the trees, moving quietly like a shadow. You watch him go, and you feel very lonely. The Crow people have lived here forever. If they are leaving, it means the mountains are no longer a safe place for people. It means the land is turning into an enemy. There is a long moment of atmospheric silence. None of the men speak. You can only hear the wind and the soft sound of a horse shifting its weight. You look up at the sky. The clouds are a dark, bruised purple color now. They look heavy, as if they are full of stones. You think about the squirrels and their nuts. You think about the beaver and their thick fur. You realize that nature is getting ready for a war. A historical fact you know is that Native American tribes often helped the trappers survive. Without the scouts like two horses, many white men would have walked straight into their deaths. They knew how to read the clouds and the wind. They knew when to stay and when to run. Today, the scout is telling you to run, but you have no place to go. You have to stay and hunt. You have to get those beaver pelts if you want your farm in Missouri. Bridger climbs back onto his horse. "We move north," he shouts. "Keep your eyes open and your rifles dry. We have work to do before the world turns white." You kick your horse and follow the line. You feel the weight of the scout's words in your chest. It feels like a stone. You think about the winter coming down from the peaks. You imagine it like a giant white beast, walking slowly toward you with its cold breath. You reach into your coat and pull your woolen scarf tighter around your neck. The wool is warm, but it cannot stop the chill that is growing inside you. The trail gets steeper now. The horses have to work harder, their muscles bunching and pulling as they climb. You see a small patch of old ice in the shade of a rock. It is hard and clear, like a piece of glass. Your horse steps around it carefully. He knows the danger, too. You watch the mountains ahead. They look bigger now and more dangerous. They are beautiful, but they are also very cold. You wonder if you will still be here when the sun turns warm again. You wonder if the scout is right and if the snow will really be as deep as a house. You try to focus on the small things. The way your saddle feels. The smell of the horse's sweat. The sound of your own breathing. These are the things that are real. The killing winter is still just a story, a warning from a man who has lived 40 winters. But as the sun starts to dip lower and the shadows grow long and blue on the snow, you begin to believe the story is true. The mountains are quiet, waiting for the first flake to fall, and you are riding right into the center of it. The camp is a busy place now, but the noise feels muffled, as if the heavy air is drinking up the sound. You stand by your horse, looking at the small pile of things you own. Out here, you cannot have much. Everything you have must fit on your horse or on your own back. If you take too much, the horse will tire and fail. If you take too little, you will not have the tools you need to stay alive. It is a careful balance, like weighing gold on a tiny scale. You pick up your long rifle. It is heavy, made of dark wood and cold iron. You can feel the weight of it in your arms, a solid and comforting weight. This rifle is your best friend. It is what puts meat in your pot and keeps the grey wolves away from your bed. You take a piece of soft cloth and a bit of oil. You rub the oil into the metal parts of the gun. The oil has a sharp, clean smell that hides the scent of the wood smoke for a moment. You want the metal to be slick and black so that the damp air does not turn it red with rust. Rust is a quiet enemy. It eats away at the iron until the gun is no longer safe. You work the cloth over the barrel, feeling the smooth, round shape of it. It is cold, so cold that it almost sticks to your skin. You check the lock, the part that makes the spark. You pull it back with your thumb. Click. It is a strong, healthy sound. You make sure the tiny hole where the fire goes is clear. You cannot have a gun that fails when a big bear is running toward you. Next, you reach for your possibles bag. This is a microhistory detail that every man in the mountains has. It is a bag made of thick leather, tanned until it is as tough as a piece of bark. Inside this bag, you keep the small things that make life possible. That is why it has its name. You reach inside and pull out a needle and thread. The needle is made of bone, and the thread is actually dried sinew from a deer's leg. It is very strong, much stronger than the cotton thread your mother used back in Missouri. You use this to fix your leather clothes or your moccasins. If a seam rips in the middle of a storm, the cold will find its way in like a snake. You have to be able to sew it shut, even with frozen fingers. You put the needle back and fill the other things in the bag. There are lead balls, heavy and smooth and round. Each one was made by hand, melted in a small pot over a fire and poured into a mold. You have enough for many days, but you will not waste them. There is a piece of flint, a hard grey stone with sharp edges. When you strike it against a piece of steel, it makes a shower of bright yellow sparks. This is how you make fire. Without fire, you are a dead man. You check to see that the flint is not chipped. You want it to be ready. You look at the ground and see a small rectangular shape wrapped in a piece of oilcloth. You pick it up carefully. You unwrap the cloth to show a small book. It is your mother's Bible. The leather cover is worn and soft, smoothed by years of hands holding it. You open the front cover. There, in faded ink, is your name. Your mother wrote it the day you left the farm. You can almost see her kitchen now. You can see the sunlight coming through the window and hitting the wooden table. You can smell the bread she was baking. She gave you this book so you would not forget who you are. You run your thumb along the edges of the pages. They are very thin, like the wings of a moth. The paper is old and has a yellow color now. You cannot read all the words, but you know some of them. You know the stories of people wandering in the wild, looking for a home. It feels like her own story. You wrap the book back in its cloth. You place it deep inside your bag, right against your chest. You want it to be the last thing the cold reaches. It feels like a small piece of warmth, even if it is only made of paper and ink. A historical fact of the mountain life is that these men were often very lonely, and a single book or a letter from home was worth more than a pile of beaver pelts. They would read the same pages over and over until the words were worn away. You are no different. That book is your link to a world where people sleep in beds and eat at tables. You turn to your horse. He is watching you with his large, dark eyes. He knows that something is happening. He can see the other horses being loaded with heavy bags and bundles of furs. You lift your saddle and place it on his back. The leather makes a long, low creaking sound. You pull the straps tight. You want the saddle to stay in the center of his back so it does not rub his skin raw. If the horse gets a sore, he cannot carry you. You speak to him in a low voice, a soft murmur that only he can hear. You tell him that it is okay. You tell him that it is okay. You tell him that you will look after him if he looks after you. The camp is almost empty now. Most of the other men have already started to move. You see the grey smoke of the dying fires rising into the air. The fires are just piles of red coals now, losing their heat to the wind. You stand there for a moment in the atmospheric silence of the clearing. The birds are gone. The insects are quiet. There is no sound at all, except for the distant rushing of the river and the sigh of the wind in the tops of the pine trees. It is a lonely sound. It makes the world feel very big and makes you feel very small. You feel a sudden weight in your heart, a feeling of being very far from home. You look at your hands. They're rough and dirty, with dark lines under the fingernails. They do not look like the hands of the boy who left Missouri. They are the hands of a man who has worked in the dirt and the ice. You feel the strength in them, the hard muscles that come from pulling on ropes and swinging a heavy axe. You are 23 years old, but you feel much older. The mountains do that to you. They take your youth and they give you a hard kind of wisdom instead. You climb into the saddle. The leather is cold and you can feel the chill of the iron stirrups through your boots. You settle yourself and pick up the reins. You look at the trail ahead. It is a thin line of brown earth that disappears into the tall grass and the dark woods. You do not know what is waiting for you at the end of that trail. You do not know if you will find the beaver you need. You do not know if the scout was right about the killing winter. But you have your rifle. You have your possibles bag with your needle and thread. You have the small Bible against your chest. You have everything you need to survive, as long as your luck holds. You kick your horse softly, and he starts to move. He walks with a steady rocking motion. You follow the tracks of the men who went before you. The dust is already settling back onto the frost. You ride away from the river, away from the camp, and into the shadow of the great mountains. The sun is just a pale light in the sky, and the world is turning grey. You are moving into the deep wild, and there is no turning back now. The night shift is starting, and the watch has begun. You have been riding for many days now. The sun rises and sets, and each time it feels a little lower in the sky. The air is thinner here, and it feels sharper in your lungs. It is like breathing in tiny bits of glass. Your horse is tired. You can feel his heart beating against your legs. Every step is an effort as you climb higher and higher. You are moving through a forest of tall pine trees. The trees are so thick that they block out much of the light. It is dark and quiet under the branches. The ground is covered in a thick carpet of brown needles. They make no sound when the horse walks on them. It is like riding on a soft bed. Then the trees begin to open up. You come out of the shadows and stop your horse at the edge of a great cliff. You look down and your breath catches in your throat. Below you is a valley so beautiful it does not seem real. It is a wide, flat space surrounded by high, white mountains. A river winds through the middle of it like a silver ribbon. But the strangest thing is the steam. You see white clouds rising from the ground in a dozen different places. At first, you think they are campfires. You think there must be 100 men down there cooking their breakfast. But the steam is too white, and it is coming straight out of the earth. You start to lead your horse down the steep path. As you get closer to the valley floor, the air changes. It is no longer just cold and sharp. It begins to feel damp and heavy. And then you smell it. It is a strange smell, like rotten eggs. It is the smell of the earth's insides. It is a smell you have never known before, but it is not a bad smell. It is just different. It tells you that this place is unlike any other place in the world. This is the Yellowstone country. As you reach the bottom, you ride toward one of the white clouds. Your horse is nervous. He tosses his head and snorts. He can feel the heat coming from the ground. You stop him a few feet away from a pool of water. The water is a bright, deep blue, like a piece of the sky has fallen into the dirt. It is bubbling and hissing. You get down from your saddle and walk toward the edge. You can feel the warmth on your skin. It feels like standing near a big kitchen stove. You reach out your hand and feel the steam. It is wet and hot. It wets your fur sleeve and makes your cold fingers feel soft again. This is a geothermal spring. That is a big word, but it just means a hot pool of water that comes from deep under the ground. The earth is very hot far below, and it boils the water and pushes it up to the surface. In a world that is turning to ice, this heat is a miracle. A simple historical fact is that Jim Bridger and the other mountain men loved this valley because the ground stayed warm even in the middle of a blizzard. The heat from these pools keeps the grass green longer and keeps the river from freezing solid in some places. It is a place where a man might have a chance to survive when the rest of the world is frozen. You stand there for a moment in the atmospheric silence of the valley. The only sound is the gulp, gulp, gulp of the bubbling water. You watch the white steam rise up and disappear into the grey sky. It is very peaceful. For a minute, you forget about the killing winter. You forget about the beaver pelts you need to catch. You just feel the warmth on your face. You look at the deep blue water and wonder how deep it goes. You wonder if the earth is trying to tell you something with all this heat and steam. You reach into your belt and pull out your green river knife. This is your microhistory detail for today. It is a strong knife with a wooden handle and a blade made of bright steel. On the blade, near the handle, are the words Green River. These knives were made in a factory far away in a place called Massachusetts. Every trapper wants one because the steel is very good and stays sharp for a long time. You use it for everything. You use it to cut your meat, to make wood shavings for your fire, and to skin the beaver. You hold the knife in your hand and look at your reflection in the shiny metal. Your face is dirty and your hair is long. You look like a man of the wild. You use the warmth of the hot spring to wipe the cold grease off the blade. The heat makes the grease melt away, leaving the steel clean and bright. You look around the valley. You see the other men of the brigade spreading out. They are looking for good places to build. You see the river and you see the willow trees along the banks. That is where the beaver will be. They like the soft wood of the willow trees. You can see the small dams they have built across the side streams. This is a good place. There is wood for building cabins. There is wood for the horses. There is heat from the ground. And there are beaver for the traps. You feel a little bit of hope. Maybe the Crow Scout was wrong. Maybe the winter will not be so bad here in this warm valley. You look at the bubbling pool and the rising steam. It feels like the earth is offering you a gift. It is offering you a place to hide from the wind. You climb back onto your horse. The saddle feels a little warmer now. You ride toward a stand of tall pine trees near the river. This is where you will build your home. This is where you will wait for the snow to fall. The sun is starting to go down behind the mountains. The shadows are growing long and blue across the grass. But here, near the hot pools, the air stays soft. You watch a small bird fly down and take a drink from a place where the hot water meets the cold river. The bird shakes its feathers and flies away. If the bird is still here, then maybe you can stay here too. You take a deep breath of the damp, warm air. It tastes like sulfur and wet earth. It is the taste of the Yellowstone. You find Jim Bridger near the river. He is looking at a spot where the ground is flat and the trees are thick. This is the place, he says. He does not need to say more. You know he is right. You look at the trees and you think about the work ahead. You will have to cut those trees down. You will have to lift the heavy logs. You will have to build a wall against the wind. But today the sun is still shining and the steam is still rising. You have reached the Yellowstone, and for now, that is enough. You feel the warmth of the spring one last time before you turn your horse toward the woods. The night is coming, but you have found a place to rest. The sound of the axe hitting the wood is loud in the quiet valley. Thwack, thwack. It is a rhythmic sound, like a heartbeat. You are standing in a grove of pine trees near the river. The air is cold, but your body is warm from the hard work. You can feel the sweat running down your back under your heavy wool shirt. Every time you swing the axe, you feel the muscles in your shoulders and arms pull tight. The wood is hard and frozen, and tiny chips of white pine fly into the air. They look like little sparks of wood. Some of them land in your hair, and some land on the cold ground. You are building your home. It is not a big house like the ones back in Missouri. It is a small cabin, just big enough for you and two other men. Their names are Jacob Hawkins and William Cole. Jacob is an older man who has been in the mountains for 5 years. He has a grey beard and knows how to do almost everything. William is a greenhorn, which means he is new to this life. He is young and his hands are still soft, but he is a hard worker. The three of you must work together if you want to finish the cabin before the big snow hits the ground. You have chosen trees that are about 8 inches thick. They are straight and strong. Once you chop a tree down, you have to strip away the branches. Then you use your draw knife to peel off the bark. This is your microhistory detail for the day. A draw knife is a long, sharp blade with a handle at each end. You sit on the log, grab the handles, and pull the blade toward you. It curls the bark away in long, thin strips that smell like fresh sap. Removing the bark is important because it stops bugs from living in your walls and keeps the wood from rotting too fast. After the logs are clean, you carry them to the spot you picked near the hot springs. Carrying the logs is the hardest part. You and Jacob each take one end, while William helps in the middle. The wood is heavy and the barkless surface is slippery with sap. Your gloves get sticky and black from the pine tar. Once you have a pile of logs, you begin to lay the foundation. You place 4 logs in a square on the ground. To make them fit together at the corners, you use your axe to cut a deep V shape or a notch into the ends. When the logs are stacked, the notches lock together so the walls do not fall down. A historical fact about these cabins is that they were built without a single iron nail. Iron was too heavy to carry across the mountains, and it was very expensive. Instead, the mountain men used the weight of the logs and the clever notches to hold everything in place. If the notches were cut well, the cabin would be strong enough to stand against the fiercest mountain winds. As you work, the sun moves across the sky, but the valley stays grey. You look up and see the clouds getting lower. They are touching the tops of the pine trees now. You know you must hurry. You and the men work until your hands ache and your backs feel like they are breaking. By the end of the first week, the walls are as high as your chest. By the end of the second week, they are higher than your head. Now comes the part that keeps the cold out. You cannot just have logs with gaps between them. The wind would blow right through. You have to chink the walls. You go down to the riverbank and gather thick green moss and wet mud. You mix them together and push the mixture into every crack between the logs. You use a small flat stick to pack it in tight. As the mud dries, it turns hard like stone. It seals the cabin and keeps the warmth of the fire inside. It is slow, messy work. The mud gets under your fingernails and stains your clothes, but every crack you fill makes the cabin feel more like a real home. For the roof, you lay long poles across the top of the walls. On top of the poles, you place layers of tree bark and then a thick layer of dirt. The dirt is heavy, but it is the best thing for keeping the heat in. Finally, you build the fireplace. You find flat stones in the river and stack them against one wall. You use more mud to hold the stones together. You spend a whole day making sure the chimney is straight. If it is crooked, the smoke will fill the room and choke you. You want a chimney that draws the smoke up and out into the sky. There is a moment of atmospheric silence when the last log is placed and the door is hung on its leather hinges. You stand back and look at what you have made. The cabin is small, maybe 10 feet by 12 feet. It is squat and dark and looks like it grew right out of the earth. It is not pretty, but it is solid. It smells of fresh pine and damp mud. You look at the small square hole you left for a window. You don't have glass, so you stretch a piece of thin deerskin over it. The skin is scraped until it is almost clear. It lets in a soft yellow light that makes the inside of the cabin look warm even when it is cold outside. You walk inside and sit on a pile of pine branches. These will be your beds. They are springy and smell wonderful. Jacob is already building the first small fire in the new stone hearth. You watch the tiny orange flames lick at the dry wood. A thin trail of blue smoke goes up the chimney just like it should. You feel a great sense of relief. You have a roof, you have walls, you have a fire. The wilderness is still out there, but now you have a place to hide from it. You look at your hands. They are covered in blisters and sap, and your knuckles are bruised. You are exhausted, but you are also proud. You built this with your own strength. You look at William, who is leaning against the wall with his eyes closed. He looks tired, but he is smiling. Even the greenhorn knows that this little log box is the difference between life and death. Outside, the wind is picking up. It whistles through the trees and bangs against the new logs, but inside, the air is still. The heat from the fire is starting to fill the small space. You reach into your bag and pull out a small piece of dried meat. You chew it slowly, tasting the salt and the smoke. You have survived the work. Now, you just have to survive the winter. You watch the shadows of the flames dance on the log walls, and for the first time in a long time, you feel like you might actually make it. You wake up, and the first thing you notice is the silence. It is not the normal silence of the woods. Usually, even in the middle of the night, you can hear something. You hear the river as it bubbles over the dark stones. You hear the wind as it brushes against the tall pine trees. You might even hear the soft huff of a horse or the snap of a twig in the distance. But this morning the world feels like it has been wrapped in a thick, soft cloth. All the sounds are gone. It is a heavy kind of quiet that makes you feel very far away from everything. You are lying on your bed of pine branches. They're still springy and smell of the woods. You pull your buffalo robe tighter around your shoulders. This robe is your micro-history detail for today. It is a big, heavy thing made from the skin of a bull buffalo. The hair on the outside is dark and curly, and it is very thick. It is so thick that you can bury your whole hand in the fur and not feel the air. The leather on the inside has been rubbed with animal brains and fat until it is as soft as a piece of cloth. A good robe like this is the most important thing you own during the night shift. It keeps the heat of your body close to your skin. Without it, the cold of the ground would seep into your bones while you sleep. You can smell the faint scent of old smoke and earth on the fur. It is a comforting smell. You look at the small window where the deer skin is stretched. The light coming through is a strange pale blue. It is not the bright yellow of a sunny morning. It looks cold. You sit up and feel the chill in the air. The fire in the stone hearth has burned down to a few glowing red eyes. You reach out and grab a small piece of wood to toss onto the coals. You watch as a tiny puff of grey smoke rises, and then a small orange flame licks the side of the log. The light from the fire dances on the log walls of your new home. You stand up and walk to the door. You have to pull hard on the leather handle because the door is sticking a little. When you finally swing it open, your breath catches. The world you knew yesterday is gone. Everything is white. Every branch of every tree is covered in a soft, thick layer of snow. It is so white that it hurts your eyes for a moment. The ground is hidden under a blanket that looks like soft sugar. It is not deep yet, maybe only an inch or two, but it is falling fast. You step outside, and your moccasins sink into the cold white powder. It makes a soft whoosh sound. You look up at the sky. It is a flat, heavy grey. You cannot see the sun at all. The air is filled with millions of tiny white flakes. They are drifting down slowly, circling in the air like little feathers. One lands on your hand. You look at it closely. It has a beautiful shape, with tiny points like a star. Then, the warmth of your skin turns it into a tiny, clear drop of water. A historical fact about this part of the world is that the snow in the Rocky Mountains can be very heavy. People often call it wet snow or heavy snow because it has a lot of water in it. This kind of snow is dangerous because it weighs a lot. Just 1 foot of this snow sitting on your roof can be as heavy as a small horse. You look up at the roof of your cabin and see the layer of dirt and bark you put there. You hope the poles you used are strong enough to hold the weight if the snow does not stop. By noon, the light flakes have changed. They are no longer small and slow. They are now big and heavy, and they are falling straight down. The wind is picked up, and it is blowing the snow into high piles, which you call drifts. You see the wood pile you worked so hard to build. It is already starting to look like a white mound. You realize that if the snow keeps falling like this, you would not be able to find your wood at all. You grab your shovel. It is a simple tool made of a flat piece of wood with a handle. You start to clear a path from the door to the wood pile. It is hard work. The snow is cold and it gets into the tops of your moccasins. You have to stop every few minutes to blow on your fingers to keep them from turning blue. Every time you throw a shovel of snow, you see the white powder fly into the air and disappear into the wind. You look over at the other cabins. You can see the thin trails of smoke rising from their chimneys. The smoke is grey against the white sky. You see Jacob and William coming out of the woods. They have been checking the horses. They look like two dark ghosts moving through the white world. Their coats are covered in snow, and their beards have tiny bits of ice hanging from them. They look tired. "It is coming down hard," Jacob says. His voice is muffled by the snow. "Will it stop?" William asks. He looks a little bit scared. He is the greenhorn, and he has never seen a mountain winter before. Jacob does not answer. He just looks up at the heavy grey sky. He knows that once the snow starts in the Yellowstone, it does not like to stop. There is a moment of atmospheric silence as the three of you stand there. The world is so quiet you can hear the sound of your own heart beating. You look at the trees. They are bending low under the weight of the snow. Some of the branches are so heavy they are touching the ground. You think about how the world can change so fast. Just a few weeks ago, you were standing in the warm grass near the river. Now, the grass is gone. The river is starting to grow edges of ice. The world is becoming a place of white and grey. You feel a sense of being very small. The mountains are so big, and the snow is so vast. You realize that you cannot fight the snow. You can only try to live with it. You go back inside the cabin and pull the door shut. You drop the heavy wooden bar across the door to keep the wind from pushing it open. Inside, it is dark and warm. The fire is crackling now, and the smell of the pine wood is strong. You take off your wet coat and hang it near the fire. You see the steam starting to rise from the wall. You sit down on your bed and listen. You can hear the wind whistling through the cracks in the logs, but the mud and moss you used for chinking are holding strong. You feel the warmth of the fire on your face, and you feel safe for a moment. But then, you hear a soft thump on the roof. It is the sound of more snow falling. You think about the beaver in their houses under the ice. You think about the bears sleeping in their dark caves. They are all tucked away, waiting for the cold to pass. You are like them now. You are in your little wooden cave, and the world outside is turning into a great white ocean. You reach for a piece of dried meat and start to chew. It is salty and tough, but it feels good to have food in your belly. You watch the fire. The orange light makes long shadows on the walls. You think about the months ahead. You think about how you will have to dig your way out every morning. You think about the wood you will need to burn. You realize that the night shift has truly begun. The mountains are no longer just a place to work. They are a place you must survive. You pull your buffalo robe over your legs and close your eyes, listening to the soft, steady sound of the snow hitting the roof. It sounds like 1,000 tiny fingers tapping on the wood, telling you that the winter is here to stay. The world has changed into a place of hard, blue glass. The soft white flakes of last week are gone, replaced by a cold so deep it feels like it has a weight of its own. When you wake up, the air inside the cabin is so cold that your breath does not just look like steam, it looks like a thick white cloud that hangs in front of your face for a long time. You reach out a hand to move your buffalo robe, and the fur is stiff. The moisture from your breath has frozen into tiny crystals of ice on the edge of the blanket. They look like white dust, but they feel sharp and cold against your skin. You crawl out of your bed and stand up. Your joints make a small popping sound, like dry twigs breaking. The floor is made of dirt, and it is frozen as hard as stone. You walk to the water bucket sitting near the door. This is where you see the power of the deep freeze. The bucket is made of thick wood, but the water inside is no longer liquid. It is a solid block of ice. It has a slight bulge at the top, where the ice expanded as it froze. You pick up a heavy iron ladle and hit the top of the ice. Clang. It sounds like you are hitting a piece of iron. It does not break. You will have to set the whole bucket near the fire just to get a drink of water. You look at the walls. The mud chinking between the logs has frozen so solid that it has cracked in a few places. You can hear the logs themselves making noise. In the middle of the night, you hear a sound like a gunshot. Pop. It is the wood of the cabin wall. The moisture inside the logs is freezing and expanding, and it makes the wood scream and crack. It is a lonely sound to hear when the wind is howling outside. It reminds you that the cold is trying to get inside, trying to find any tiny gap in your home. You pull on your moccasins. These are your microhistory detail for today. Yours are made of thick buffalo hide with the fur left on the inside. You call them winter moccasins. They are much larger than the ones you wear in the summer. You have stuffed them with dry grass and bits of wall to keep your toes from touching the leather. A historical fact about mountain men is that they often lost their toes to the frost. The cold is a sneaky enemy. It takes the feeling away from your feet first, so you do not even know you are being hurt until it is too late. You stomp your feet on the hard ground to get the blood moving. It hurts a little, a dull throbbing pain, but that is good. Pain means your feet are still alive. You go to the door and push. It does not move. You have to put your shoulder against the wood and shove with all your might. With a loud creak, the door gives way. The ice that had formed around the edges breaks into 1,000 tiny pieces. You step outside, and the cold hits you like a physical blow. It knocks the wind out of your chest. You have to pull your scarf over your mouth and nose just to breathe. The air is so dry and so cold that it burns your throat. You walk toward the river. The valley is silent and still. The hot springs are still steaming, but the steam does not rise high anymore. The cold air pushes it down, so the white clouds just crawl along the ground like ghosts. You reach the bank of the river and you stop. The rushing sound is gone. The water that was moving so fast just a month ago is now silent. The river has turned into a road of blue ice. You walk out onto the ice. You move slowly, testing each step with your weight. The ice is thick, maybe 2 feet deep. It is a strange dark blue color, and you can see deep into it. You see bubbles trapped in the frozen water, frozen in place like tiny pearls. You see a branch of a tree stuck in the ice, its leaves still green but held tight in the cold grip of the river. The river is not dead, but it is asleep. It is waiting under its shield of ice for the sun to return. There is a moment of atmospheric silence as you stand in the middle of the frozen river. You look up at the mountains. They look like they are made of iron and snow. The sky is a very pale, clear blue, without a single cloud. In the mountains, the clearest days are often the coldest. There is nothing to hold the heat of the sun, so it all escapes into the big, empty sky. You feel very alone. You are just a tiny speck of life in a world that has turned into a giant icebox. You can hear the sound of your own heart thump, 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 the only moving thing in the silence. You look down at the ice under your feet. You see a crack that runs from one bank to the other. It is deep and jagged. You realize that even something as strong as a river can be broken by the cold. You think about the beaver. They are under this ice right now. They have their houses built of mud and sticks, and they have a hole that goes deep under the frozen surface. They're swimming in the dark, cold water where the ice has not reached. They are eating the willow branches they stored away in the autumn. They are safe and warm in their little world, and you are up here in the wind. You walk back to the cabin. You need to get more wood for the fire. The wood pile is covered in a layer of frost that looks like white fur. You pick up a log, and it is so cold that it sticks to your leather glove. You carry it inside and drop it onto the fire. The flames hiss as the frost melts and turns to steam. Then the wood catches and the orange light fills the room. Jacob and William are awake now. They are huddled near the fire, their hands out to catch the heat. William's face is very pale. He looks at the frozen water bucket and then at you. "The river is gone," he says. His voice is a little shaky. "It is not gone," Jacob says. He is an old hand and does not get scared easily. "It is just hiding. We will have to chop a hole in the ice every morning if we want to drink. It is hard work, but it keeps you warm." You sit down near the fire. You feel the heat starting to soak into your legs. It feels like a blessing. You think about the night shift. Out here, the night never really ends in the winter. The sun only comes up for a few hours, and even then, it does not do much. Most of your life is spent in the dark, in the small circle of light from the fire. You watch the flames, and you think about the blue ice on the river. You think about the bubbles trapped in the water. You realize that you are just like those bubbles. You are trapped in the winter, waiting for the world to melt. You reach for your Bible and hold it in your lap. You do not open it. You just feel the weight of it. It reminds you that there is a world beyond the ice. A world where rivers run and birds sing. You just have to wait. You just have to keep the fire going. You look at Jacob and William and you see your own reflection in their eyes. You are 3 men in a wooden box, surrounded by a world of glass. You pull your robe around you and prepare for another day of the deep freeze. The wind has become a constant scream outside the log walls. It is no longer just a cold breeze. It is a force that pushes against the cabin like a giant's hand. Even with the mud chinking in the heavy door, you can feel the air moving inside the room. The heat from the fire seems to be sucked out through the chimney, almost as fast as you can make it. Jacob is huddled so close to the hearth that the hair on his arms is starting to singe, yet he is still shivering. William sits in the corner, wrapped in 3 layers of wool. his eyes wide and dark. Every time a fresh gust of wind hits the logs, the cabin groans, and the deerskin window flutters like a trapped bird. That afternoon, a shadow appears at the door. You hear a heavy thumping sound, and you move the wooden bar to let the visitor in. It is Jim Bridger. He's covered from head to toe in white frost. His eyelashes are heavy with ice, and his beard is a solid frozen mass. He looks like a man made of snow. He steps inside, and the cold that follows him is so sharp it makes you gasp. He does not sit down. He stands by the fire, letting the ice on his face slowly turn to water. "We cannot keep going like this," Bridger says. His voice is deep and gravelly. "The wood piles are going down too fast. The wind is stealing all our warmth. If we don't change something, we'll be out of wood before January, and then the cold will take us." You look at the small stack of logs in the corner. You worked so hard to cut them, but you know he is right. The fire has to burn all day and all night just to keep the water bucket from turning to stone. Bridger looks at the walls, then up at the roof. "The Crow have a way," he says, "and I've seen the people far to the north do it too. They use the snow. We always think of snow as the enemy, but out here, it can be your best friend. We are going to let the snow bury the cabins. We're going to pack it deep against the logs, all the way to the roofline." You look at Jacob. He looks confused. "Bury ourselves?" he asks. "Won't that just make it colder?" "Snow is ice, Jim." "No," Bridger says, shaking his head. "Snow is full of air. It's like a thick wool coat for the whole building. It keeps the wind from touching the wood, and it holds the heat inside like a clay oven. We'll leave the door clear and keep a hole for the chimney, but the rest will be under the white." This is a clever idea. A historical fact about survival in the high country is that snow is a wonderful insulator. That is a big word, but it just means it is a material that stops heat from moving. Because snow is mostly trapped air, it acts like the feathers on a bird or the fur on a buffalo. It blocks the freezing wind and keeps the warm air from the fire trapped inside the log walls. Bridger hands you a snow shovel. "This is your micro-history detail for today. It is not like a modern shovel made of metal. It is a wide, flat blade made from the shoulder bone of a buffalo, tied to a sturdy ashwood handle with strips of raw leather. The bone is light but very strong, and the wide shape is perfect for scooping up the dry, powdery mountain snow." Bridger tells you to get to work. He says every cabin in the camp is doing the same. You step outside with Jacob and William. The wind tries to knock you over, but you plant your feet and start to dig. The snow is piled high in drifts already. You use the bone shovel to scoop the snow and throw it against the north wall of the cabin. The north side is where the wind hits the hardest. You pack the snow down with your boots, making it tight and solid. You want it to be like a new wall of white stone. It is brutal work. The wind whips the snow back into your face, and your eyes sting from the ice. But as you build the mound higher, you notice something. When you stand close to the wall where the snow is packed, the wind doesn't feel as sharp. The snow is already doing its job. You work for hours, scooping and packing, scooping and packing, scooping and packing. You build a slope of snow that goes from the ground all the way up to the edge of your bark roof. There is a strange atmospheric silence that begins to settle as the snow gets deeper around the cabin. As the walls disappear under the white, the sound of the wind begins to fade. It changes from a sharp scream to a low, distant hum. It is as if the world is slowly going quiet. You look around the valley and see the other cabins disappearing too. They look like giant white bubbles rising out of the earth. The only thing showing is the very top of the chimneys, with little puffs of grey smoke coming out. By the time the sun begins to set, the north and east walls are completely covered. You go inside to rest, and the change is amazing. The cabin is quiet. The whistling sound of the wind through the cracks is gone. You take off your heavy fur coat, and for the first time in weeks, you don't feel the immediate bite of the cold. The air feels still. The heat from the small fire is staying in the room, warming the logs and the dirt floor. "Jim was right," William says. "He is sitting on his bed, his face lit by the orange glow of the fire. It's like we're in a cave, a warm cave." Jacob nods, poking at the fire with a stick. "It's the old way. We just had to remember it. We'll finish the other walls tomorrow. If we get enough snow on top, we might even be able to sleep without our boots on." You sit down and feel the quiet. It is a good feeling. You realize that out here, survival means being clever. It means looking at the world differently. You used to see the snow as a wall that trapped you, but now you see it as a blanket that protects you. You are learning the secrets of the night shift. You are learning how to use the mountains to fight the mountains. You reach for your tin cup and take a sip of water. It is not frozen. The heat of the room is enough to keep it liquid. You watch the fire, and you feel a little bit of the weight lift from your heart. You are still in the middle of a killing winter, and you are still far from home. But tonight you are warm. Tonight you have a white shield between you and the wind. You listen to the silence of the snow, and you feel a deep, heavy sleep starting to pull at your eyes. The cabin is hidden, and you are safe inside. The next morning, you wake to a world that feels strangely soft. The sharp, biting drafts that used to crawl across the floor like invisible snakes are gone. The cabin is dark, darker than it has ever been, because the snow now covers the small deerskin window. But it is also warm. You do not shiver when you pull your arms out from under the buffalo robe. You sit up and look at the glowing embers in the hearth. The air feels thick and still, like the air in a deep cellar. Time to finish the work, Jacob says. He's already standing by the door, pulling on his heavy mittens. William is slow to move, but even he looks better today. The quiet of the buried cabin has given him the first real night of rest he has had in weeks. You step outside, and the wind tries to push you back, but you have work to do. You take up your bone shovel again. Today, you are working on the south and west walls. You also need to pile snow onto the roof. You and the other 2 men move like a team. You scoop the dry cold powder and throw it against the logs. You build the mound higher and higher until the wood is completely hidden from sight. When it comes time for the roof, you have to be very careful. You climb up a ladder made of notched logs and stand on the edge of the roof. The dirt and bark layer is frozen solid, but you do not want to put all your weight in one spot. You begin to spread the snow across the top of the cabin. You make it about 2 feet thick. You are essentially turning your home into a snow cave with a wooden heart. You leave only 2 openings, one for the door and one for the chimney. A historical fact about these buried cabins is that they could stay remarkably warm, while the air outside might be 40 degrees below zero. The air inside a well-buried cabin could stay at a steady 30 or 40 degrees above zero just from the heat of a tiny fire and the breath of the men living there. This is because the snow blocks the wind chill. The wind cannot strip the heat away from the logs if it cannot touch them. You are wrapped in a giant white coat that never lets the breeze through. You spend hours packing the snow tight. You use the flat side of your shovel to slap the snow until it is hard. You want it to stay put even if the wind screams. As you work, you look at your hands. Your gloves are covered in a thin layer of ice from the moisture in the snow. You feel a strange kind of peace. The work is hard, but it has a purpose. You are building a fortress against the winter. There is a moment of atmospheric silence when you finish. You stand on the roof and look out across the valley. From up here, you cannot even see the other cabins. The whole camp has disappeared. All you see are mounds of white and the thin blue trails of smoke rising into the pale sky. It is a lonely, beautiful sight. It looks like the world has ended, and you are the only people left. You can hear the snow singing, a high whistling sound as the wind blows across the hard crust of the drifts. You climb down and walk to the door. You have dug a deep trench, a snow tunnel, to get to the entrance. The walls of the tunnel are higher than your head. It feels like walking through a hallway made of white glass. You step inside the cabin and pull the door shut. The change is incredible. The roar of the wind is gone. It is so quiet that you can hear the tiny hiss of the fire and the sound of William's breathing. You take off your heavy coat and your wet moccasins. You hang them on a wooden peg. The air is cozy. You don't need the fire to be a roaring beast anymore. A small, steady flame is enough to keep the room comfortable. You reach into your bag and pull out your tinderbox. This is your micro-history detail for this section. It is a small tin box that keeps your fire-starting tools dry. Inside, you have a char cloth, a piece of old linen that has been burnt until it is black and catches a spark very easily. You also have a small piece of punk wood, which is rotten wood that glows for a long time. You use these to make sure you never lose your fire. If the fire goes out in a buried cabin, it is very hard to get it started again in the dark. You check your char cloth, making sure it is dry. It is a small thing, but your life depends on it. You sit down with Jacob and William. You share a small portion of dried elk meat. You chew it slowly, enjoying the way the salt wakes up your tongue. "We're hidden now," William whispers. He sounds more relaxed than he has in days. "The mountains can't find us under all this white." Jacob smiles, his grey beard twitching. "They'll find us, boy, but they'll find us warm and awake." We've turned the snow against itself. That's how a mountain man stays alive. You take what the world throws at you and you make it into a shield. You look at the log walls. You can see the dark lines where the mud chinking is holding tight. You feel a sense of pride. You built this. You buried it. You made a home where there should only be ice. You watch the smoke rise straight up the chimney hole, a thin line of grey reaching for the sky. You know that outside the temperature is dropping even further. You know the wolves are out there and the wind is looking for a way in. But here, in your snow-covered box, you are safe. You pull your buffalo robe over your shoulders, not because you are cold, but because it feels good to be tucked away. You listen to the silence, and for the first time, the killing winter feels like something you can beat. The buried cabin is a world of its own now. Inside, the air has a smell that you will never forget. It is a mix of wood smoke, old leather, and the damp earth of the floor, because you are covered in feet of snow. There is no light from the outside. The only light comes from the small fire in the hearth. It casts long orange shadows that stretch across the log walls and the ceiling. You spend your time watching these shadows. They move and jump, making the cabin feel like it is breathing with you. But there is a new sound that you have started to notice. It is a sharp crack, like a small twig breaking, coming from above your head. You look up at the chimney hole. This is the only opening in your roof, the place where the smoke escapes into the cold sky. You realize that the heat from your fire is melting the snow around the edges of the hole. During the day, the water drips down, but at night, when the fire burns low, that water turns into hard, clear ice. This is the danger of the smoke hole. If that ice grows too thick, it will seal the hole completely. You look at the thin trail of smoke. It is not moving as fast as it used to. It is starting to swirl around the ceiling, making your eyes sting and your throat feel scratchy. You realize the hole is getting smaller. If the smoke cannot get out, it will fill the cabin. It will steal your air and put you into a sleep that you will never wake from. You pick up a long, sturdy pole made of pine. This is your tool for the night shift. You stand under the chimney hole and push the pole upward. Crunch. You feel the resistance of the ice. You push harder, and a large chunk of frozen snow and ice falls down, landing in the fire with a loud hiss. A cloud of grey ash flies into the room, but suddenly, the smoke rushes upward. You can see a tiny circle of grey sky through the hole. A historical fact you know is that many trappers died because they forgot to check their chimneys. In a buried cabin, the air needs to move. If you seal yourself in too tightly to stay warm, you create a trap. You must keep that hole open, even if it lets a little bit of the killing cold inside. You have to choose between being cold and being able to breathe. In the mountains, you always choose to breathe. You sit back down, your chest feeling a little lighter. You look at your fire tongs. This is your microhistory detail. They are made of simple iron, forged by a blacksmith back in the settlements. They are heavy and black. You use them to move the hot coals around, making sure the fire burns evenly. You like the feel of the iron in your hand. It is cold on the handle, but warm near the tips. It is a solid thing in a world that feels soft and white. You use the tongs to pick up a glowing red ember and move it to the center of the hearth. You watch it glow brighter as it gets fresh air. There is a moment of atmospheric silence as the three of you sit around the fire. No one wants to talk. Talking uses energy, and energy is precious when you are not eating much. You listen to the silence of the snow walls. They are so thick now that you cannot hear the wind at all. It is a strange feeling to know that a storm might be raging just a few feet away, but inside, everything is still. You feel like you are at the bottom of a deep white ocean. You look at Jacob. He is cleaning his rifle by the light of the flames. He moves slowly, his fingers looking stiff. You look at William. He is staring at the fire, his face thin and pale. You can see the bones of his cheeks showing through his skin. You realize that you are all getting smaller. The winter is eating you, bit by bit. You reach for your water cup. It is lukewarm, and it tastes of the tin it is made of. It is not much, but it is wet. You think about the world outside. You think about the ice bridge that must be forming over the hot springs. You think about the elk that must be huddling together in the thick woods, trying to find a patch of ground that is not buried. You realize that everyone in the Yellowstone is doing the same thing. Everyone is just trying to last one more hour, one more day. You take your pine pole and set it near the door. You will have to use it again in a few hours. This is your new routine. Wake up, check the fire, poke the chimney, melt some snow. It is a small life, lived in a small space. But as long as that grey smoke keeps rising into the sky, You know you are still in the fight. You pull your buffalo robe up to your chin and watch the tiny circle of grey sky at the top of the chimney. It is the only part of the world you can see, but it is enough to know that the sun is still there, somewhere behind the clouds. The morning brings a cold that feels different. It is a heavy, quiet cold that seems to sit on the valley like a thick fog. You and Jacob decide it is time to check on the other men. In the Yellowstone, you do not live alone. You live as a part of a group, even if that group is spread out in different holes in the snow. If you do not see smoke from a neighbor's chimney for a day, it is a sign that something is wrong. You look over toward the mound where Robert Hayes and his 3 partners live. Robert is a good man. He is older than you, with a kind face and a voice that always sounds like he is about to tell a joke. He once shared a pouch of sweet tobacco with you. When your own supply had run out, you owe him a visit. You and Jacob strap on your snowshoes. These are big wooden frames with leather webbing that let you walk on top of the snow instead of sinking in. Without them, you would be buried to your waist. Walking in them is slow work. You have to lift your feet high and wide, swinging your legs out so the frames do not catch on each other. Swish, crunch, swish, crunch. The sound is loud in the atmospheric silence of the valley. The air is so still that you can hear the sound of a crow calling from a mile away. It is a lowly, sharp sound that echoes off the white mountains. As you get closer to Robert's cabin, your heart begins to beat a little faster. You look at the top of the snow mound. There is no smoke. Usually, Robert has a steady stream of grey smoke rising into the air, but today, the hole is quiet. There is a ring of white frost around the chimney opening, showing that no heat has passed through it for a long time. You and Jacob do not speak. You both know what a cold chimney means in the middle of a killing winter. You reach the entrance to their snow tunnel. It has drifted over with fresh, powdery snow. You have to use your hands to clear the way. You reach the wooden door and push. It does not budge. It is frozen shut from the inside. Jacob pulls out his hatchet. This is your micro-history detail for this section. A hatchet is a small axe that a trapper keeps tucked into his belt. The blade is made of forged steel, and the handle is made of tough hickory wood. It is a tool for many things, chopping small wood, clearing branches, or in a moment like this, breaking ice. Jacob uses the back of the hatchet to hit the edges of the door. Bang, 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 bang. The sound is like a hammer on a drum. Finally, the ice cracks and the door swings open with a low, sad groan. The air that comes out of the cabin is not warm. It is stale and flat, and it smells of old ash. You step inside and the darkness is thick. You wait for your eyes to get used to the gloom. The fire in the hearth is nothing but a pile of grey dust. There is no glow, no heat. You look toward the beds, and you see 4 shapes under the buffalo robes. They are very still. "Robert?" you call out. Your voice sounds too loud in the small room. There is no answer. You walk over to the first bed. It is Robert. He is lying on his back, his eyes closed. His face is peaceful, as if he is having a pleasant dream. His skin is a strange, waxy color, like the tallow candles your mother used to make. You reach out and touch his shoulder. Through the thick fur of his robe, he feels hard. He is as cold as the ice on the river. He has been dead for at least 2 days. You look at the other 3 men. They are the same. They are all lying in their beds, tucked in tight against the cold. There are no signs of a struggle. No one tried to get to the door. No one tried to light the fire. They simply went to sleep and never woke up. A historical fact about these buried cabins is the danger of smoke sickness. Today, we know this is caused by a gas called carbon monoxide. When a fire burns in a small room that is sealed tight with snow, it uses up all the good air. If the chimney gets blocked, or if there is not enough fresh air coming in from the door, the fire starts to make a gas that you cannot see or smell. This gas makes you very sleepy. You feel tired, you close your eyes, and your heart slowly stops beating. It is a quiet way to die, but it is a frequent danger for the men of the night shift. You and Jacob stand there in the cold darkness. The silence is heavy. You think about Robert sharing his tobacco with you. You think about how he talked about going back to Kentucky to see his sister's children. All those plans, all that life, gone because of a blocked hole in the roof. It makes you feel a coldness in your chest that has nothing to do with the winter. It is the coldness of realizing how easy it is to disappear in these mountains. "We have to tell Bridger," Jacob says quietly. His voice is rough. You nod, but you do not move yet. You look around the cabin. You see a small wooden cup sitting on the floor near Robert's bed. You see a pair of moccasins neatly placed by the cold hearth. These small things make the men feel very real and their absence feel very large. They were just 4 men trying to stay warm, and the very fire they built to save them is what took them away. You step back outside into the blinding white light of the sun. The world looks the same as it did 10 minutes ago. The mountains are still there. The steam is still rising from the hot springs. The wind is still whistling through the trees. The mountains do not care that Robert Hayes is gone. They do not care that 4 lives have been put out like a candle flame. The indifference of the land is the hardest thing to bear. You and Jacob walk back toward your own cabin. You move faster now, your snowshoes clicking against each other. When you reach your door, the first thing you do is look up at your own chimney. You see the thin, steady trail of grey smoke rising into the air. It is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. You realize that smoke is the sign of life. As long as that smoke is moving, your heart is still beating. You go inside and sit by your fire. You pick up your pine pole and you poke at your chimney hole, even though you just did it an hour ago. You want to hear the ice crack. You want to see the sparks fly upward. You look at William, who is sleeping in the corner, and you feel a sudden need to wake him up just to hear him speak. "William," you say, "wake up! Let's get some more wood." He opens his eyes and looks at you, confused. But he sits up. You need the sound of a human voice to chase away the silence of Robert's cabin. You sit there together, the 3 of you, and you do not talk about what you saw. You just watch the fire. You listen to the wood pop and hiss. You appreciate the warmth of the air and the smell of the smoke, even if it makes your eyes sting. You have learned a hard lesson today. The mountains are not just trying to freeze you, they are trying to trick you. You must stay awake. You must stay watchful. The night is long, and the watch continues. The darkness inside the cabin has become a solid thing. Because you are buried deep under the snow, and because you must keep the door shut and the window covered, the sun never truly visits you. The only light you have is the orange glow of the fire. When the wood is dry and the flames are high, you can see the whole room, but you must save your wood. So most of the time, the fire is just a small pile of red coals. In this dim light, the corners of the cabin disappear into black shadows. You feel like you are living in a world of ghosts. You have learned to do things by touch. This is a skill of the night shift. You do not need to see your water cup to find it. Your hand knows exactly where it sits on the small wooden shelf. You do not need to see your boots to put them on. Your fingers know the feel of the leather and the way the laces tie. You spend hours sitting on your bed, mending your clothes. You have a tear in your woolen leggings from a sharp branch. You hold the bone needle and the deer sinew in your hands. You cannot see the hole clearly, but you can feel the edges of the cloth. Your fingers move back and forth, pulling the sinew through, feeling the stitch grow tight. It is a slow, quiet way to spend the time. A historical fact about the mountain men is that they spent a great deal of their time in total darkness during the winter. Some men would go snowblind if they stayed outside too long in the sun, so they preferred the dim light of the cabin. But the darkness does things to a man's mind. When you cannot see the world around you, your brain starts to make its own world. You think about things you haven't thought about in years. You remember the way the clover smelled in the fields back home. You remember the sound of your father's laughter. There is a deep, atmospheric silence in the room. Jacob is sleeping, and William is sitting across from you, his head resting against the logs. You can hear the tiny sounds of the cabin. You hear the wood settle as the weight of the snow presses down from above. You hear the soft crackle of a cooling ember. Sometimes you hear a sound from outside, the long, low howl of a wolf. It is a lonely sound that travels through the snow and the wood, reaching you like a cold finger. It reminds you that you are not the only thing alive in this frozen valley. You reach for your flint and steel. This is your microhistory detail. You keep them in a small leather pouch that stays dry near the fire. The steel is a curved piece of iron that fits over your knuckles. The flint is a sharp black stone. You hold them in the dark and strike them together. Clack! A shower of tiny yellow sparks flies out, lighting up the room for a fraction of a second. In that flash, you see the logs, the beds, and the pale faces of your friends. Then, it is dark again. You do it again, just to see the light. Clack! It is like a tiny lightning storm in your hands. You realize that the darkness is a kind of prison, but it is also a shield. As long as you are in the dark, the winter cannot see you. You are hidden away, a small spark of life in a big black world. You lean back against the wall and close your eyes. You listen to the silence and wait for the morning. even though the morning will look just like the night. You are the watchman of the history that is happening right now, in the quiet and the dark. The hunger is no longer a sharp pain. It has changed into a dull, heavy ache that never leaves you. It lives in the center of your body, right behind your ribs. It makes your head feel light and your limbs feel like they are made of lead. When you try to stand up too quickly, the world spins in a circle of grey and black. You have to grab onto the log wall and wait for your eyes to find the floor again. You are 23 years old, but today you feel as old as the mountains. You look at the small pile of dried elk meat sitting on the wooden bench. It is very small now. Jacob has taken on the job of the keeper. He is the one who decides how much each man gets to eat. He is a fair man, but he is a hard one. He knows exactly how many pieces are left. This morning, he holds out a single strip of meat to you. It is no bigger than your thumb. It is dry and brown and looks like a piece of bark from a tree. "Make it last, Elijah," he says. His voice is a thin whisper. "This has to get us through the day." You take the meat and put it in your mouth. You do not chew it yet. You let it sit on your tongue, letting the salt wake up your mouth. You suck on it, trying to pull every bit of flavor out of the dried muscle. It tastes of wood smoke and old salt. It is the best thing you have ever tasted, and it is not nearly enough. A historical fact about life in the mountains is that a working trapper usually eats 6 to 8 pounds of meat every day. Your body is used to having a lot of fuel to fight the cold. Now you are giving it almost nothing. Your body is starting to eat itself just to stay warm. You reach into the corner of your supply bag. You find the very last of your flour. It is a small handful, grey and dusty. You decide to make a mountain porridge. You take your tin cup and fill it with snow. You set it near the fire until the snow turns to water. Then you stir in the flour. This cup is your micro-history detail. It is a simple thing made of thin metal with a wire handle. It is dented from being dropped on rocks, and the bottom is black from 1,000 fires. You use a small wooden spoon to stir the mix. It looks like thin paste and has no taste at all, but it is warm. There is a long moment of atmospheric silence as the three of you eat your tiny portions. The only sound is the soft scrape of the spoon against the tin cup. You look at William. He is licking his spoon, trying to find one last bit of flour. His eyes are very large in his thin face. He looks like a bird that has been caught in a storm. You want to give him some of yours, but you know you cannot. Out here, if you do not eat, you die. And if you die, you cannot help anyone else. You look at the fire. It is small today. You were trying to save the wood, just like you were saving the food. The shadows in the cabin are long and dark. You feel the cold creeping in from the corners. The snow walls are thick, but the cold is a patient thing. It waits for the fire to get small, and then it moves in. You pull your buffalo robe tighter around your waist. You can feel your hip bones poking through your skin. You think about the big feasts you had at the rendezvous last summer. You remember the smell of whole buffalo ribs roasting over a giant fire. You remember the way the fat dripped into the flames and made them raw. You remember having so much meat that you could not eat it all. It seems like a dream now. It seems like a story from another world. You realize that out here you are always just a few days away from the end. The difference between a rich man and a dead man is just a pile of meat and a stack of wood. You finish your porridge and set the tin cup down. You feel a little warmer, but the ache in your stomach is still there. It is a reminder that the winter is still winning. You look at the log walls of your home and you wonder how much longer they can keep the world away. You reach for your Bible and hold it, feeling smooth leather. You do not have the strength to read, but you like the way it feels. It is something solid in a world that is disappearing into the white. "We find more food tomorrow," William says. He is trying to be brave, but his voice shakes. Jacob doesn't say anything. He just pokes the fire with a stick, watching the sparks fly up the chimney. You know what he is thinking. Tomorrow is a long way off, and the mountains are very empty. You close your eyes and try to sleep, trying to forget the hunger that is gnawing at your middle. The night shift is quiet, and the world is very cold. The silence of the night is broken by a sound that makes your heart stop. It is not the wind, and it is not the cracking of the logs. It is a long, low groan coming from outside, near the small shelter where the horses are kept. You sit up fast, your buffalo robe falling away from your chest. The air in the cabin is like a wall of ice, but you do not feel it. You are listening. You hear the sound again. A soft, wet huff of breath that ends in a rattle. You grab your coat and your rifle. You do not even put on your boots. You just shove your feet into your oversized winter moccasins. You move the wooden bar and push open the door. The cold hits you like a hammer, but you run through the snow tunnel toward the horse shelter. Jacob is right behind you, carrying a small piece of burning wood for light. The orange glow of the torch dances off the white walls of the tunnel, making the shadows jump. When you reach the shelter, you see them. The horses are huddled together, their heads hanging low. Their breath comes out in thick grey clouds. But one horse is not standing. It is William's horse, the one with the coat the colour of autumn leaves. He is lying on his side in the snow. His legs are moving slowly, as if he is trying to run in his sleep. His eyes are open, and they reflect the light of Jacob's torch. They are big and dark and full of a quiet kind of pain. "No," you hear a voice whisper. It is William. He has come out behind you, and he is staring at his horse. He falls to his knees in the snow, not caring about the cold. He reaches out and touches the horse's neck. "No, not him, please." A historical fact about the mountain men is that their horses were often their closest friends. In a land where you might not see another human for months, a horse is the only living thing you can talk to. They carry your life on their backs, and they trust you to keep them safe. Losing a horse in the middle of winter is not just losing at all. It is like losing a member of your own family. You look at the horse's chest. It is moving very slowly. The animal is starving, just like you are. There has been no grass for weeks, only the dry bark of willow trees that you have been cutting for them. The deep freeze has taken the last of his strength. The cold has finally found his heart. You watch as his breathing gets slower and slower. The rattling sound in his throat stops. His legs go still. The light in his big dark eyes seems to fade away, leaving them dull like stones. William starts to cry. It is a quiet, choking sound. He puts his head against the horse's cold neck and sobs. You and Jacob stand there in the atmospheric silence of the winter night. The wind has died down, and the world is perfectly still. The stars above are bright and cold, watching the small tragedy in the snow. You feel a great weight in your chest. You think about the farm in Missouri and how William's father gave him this horse. You think about the promise William made to bring the animal home. That promise is now buried in the snow. You reach down and touch William's shoulder. His coat is thin, and he's shaking from the cold and the grief. "We have to go back inside, Will," you say softly. "There is nothing more we can do." He does not move at first. He just stays there in the dark, holding onto the animal that was his only link to home. Finally, Jacob reaches down and helps him up. William's face is wet with tears that are already starting to freeze on his cheeks. He looks like he has lost everything. You look at the horse one last time. He looks small now, lying in the white drift. You think about your own horse who is standing nearby, watching with ears pricked forward. He knows his friend is gone. You feel a sharp fear in your gut. If one horse can die, they all can. And if the horses die, how much longer do the men have? You walk back to the cabin in silence. The orange light from the torch is getting smaller as the wood burns down. When you get inside, you bar the door and sit by the fire. No one speaks. William goes to his corner and pulls his robe over his head. You can hear him breathing in the dark, a jagged, uneven sound. You pick up your whetstone. This is your microhistory detail. It is a small, flat stone used for sharpening your knife. You hold it in your hand, feeling the rough texture. You do not use it. You just rub your thumb over the surface. The sound of the stone against your skin is a dry, lonely sound. It reminds you of the hard edges of the world. You realize that the winter has taken a life tonight, and it will not be the last. You look at the fire and you pray that your own horse is strong enough to see the morning. The night shift has become a time of mourning, and the mountains feel colder than ever before. The sun rises, but the light is cold and flat. Inside the cabin, no one wants to move. We all know what is waiting outside in the snow. The death of the horse has changed the air in the room. It feels heavier, like the logs of the walls are pressing in on us. William is still under his robe, a small shivering mound in the corner. Jacob is sitting by the hearth, staring at the grey ashes. He looks at me and his eyes are hard. He does not have to say the words. "We are starving, and there are 200 pounds of meat lying in the snow. We cannot let it go to waste, Elijah," Jacob says. His voice is steady, but it sounds like it is coming from a deep well. "If we do not do this, we will be lying beside him in a week. The boy doesn't have to watch. A historical fact of the mountain frontier is that many men only survived because they were willing to do the hardest things. Eating a horse was common when the buffalo were gone and the snow was deep. It was the difference between a grave in the mountains and seeing your family again. You stand up, your legs feeling weak and shaky. You grab your Green River knife and your sharpening stone. You spend 10 minutes rubbing the blade against the stone. Swish, 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 swish. You need it to be sharp enough to cut through frozen hide. You and Jacob step out into the blinding white. The horse is frozen now. His body is stiff as a fallen log. The cold has preserved him perfectly. You have to work fast before your own fingers stop moving. You use your knife to make a long cut down the middle of the animal. The skin is tough and the hair is thick. You have to use all your strength to pull the hide back. It is a slow, brutal job. Your hands become covered in dark, frozen blood that looks like black paint. You use your meat saw. This is your microhistory detail. It is a small handsaw with a coarse blade made for cutting through bone and frozen muscle. Every trapper keeps one in his pack for times like this. The sound of the saw is a harsh, scraping noise creak saw that echoes off the cabin walls. You cut the meat into large chunks. It is not like the red meat of an elk. It is darker and the fat is yellow and thick. You carry the meat into the cabin piece by piece and stack it in the coolest corner. There is an atmospheric silence as you bring the first piece to the fire. You put a small chunk on a sharpened stick and hold it over the coals. The smell fills the cabin. It is a rich, sweet smell, different from buffalo or deer. It is a smell that makes your mouth water so much it hurts. William finally pulls back his robe. He smells the cooking meat, and his eyes are full of a terrible conflict. He loved that horse, but his body is screaming for life. You hand him the first piece. It is hot and dripping with yellow grease. He looks at it for a long time, tears tracking through the soot on his face. Then he takes a bite. He chews slowly, his eyes closing. No one speaks. We all eat in the dark, the only sound being the crackle of the fire and the chewing of 3 desperate men. The meat is tough and sweet, but it feels like a miracle in your stomach. You can almost feel the strength flowing back into your arms. You realize that you have made a trade with the mountains. You gave up a friend, and in return, the mountains gave you another month of life. You look at the dark meat in the corner, and then at your friends. We are survivors now, marked by the things we have done to stay alive. The night shift continues, but tonight our bellies are full, even if our hearts are heavy. The darkness of the buried cabin has always been a heavy thing, but now it feels even thicker. The sun is a stranger to you. Since the snow has climbed over the roof, you live in a world of deep shadows. You have been saving your firewood, keeping the flames small, which means the cabin is often as black as the inside of a coal mine. You can barely see your own hands in front of your face. But now, after the loss of the horse, you have something new. You have the fat. You and Jacob have spent the morning rendering the yellow fat from the horse meat. This means you melt it down in a small iron pot over the fire until it turns into a clear, oily liquid. As it cools, it becomes a soft, white grease. To most people, this is just something to eat, but to a mountain man in a dark hole, it is also a source of light. You have decided to make grease lamps. You find 3 shallow stone dishes that you picked up from the riverbank back in autumn. You fill each dish with the soft horse grease. Then, you reach into your possibles bag and pull out some twisted rag wicks. This is your microhistory detail. These are just strips of old, worn-out cotton shirts that you have twisted into tight ropes. You soak the rags in the grease until they are heavy and wet. Then you set them in the stone dishes with one end sticking out. You take a small, glowing twig from the hearth and touch it to the end of the rag. At first it only smokes, smelling like burnt hair and old meat. But then, a tiny blue flame appears. It grows into a small, steady yellow light. You light all 3 lamps and place them around the cabin. The change is small, but it feels like a grand event. The light from the grease lamps is not bright like a candle or a modern torch. It is a flickering orange glow that makes a lot of greasy black smoke. But for the first time in weeks, you can see the whole cabin. You can see the notches in the log walls. You can see the pile of furs in the corner. You can see the faces of Jacob and William. They look like different men in this light hollowed out with dark circles under their eyes. But they are here. They are alive. A historical fact about the night shift is that these grease lamps were often called slut lamps by the settlers. They were the simplest way to get light when you had no candles. They were messy and they smelled terrible. but they allowed men to mend their gear, read their Bibles, or just look at one another during the long winter nights. Without light, a man can start to lose his mind. The light keeps you connected to the world of the living. There is a moment of atmospheric silence as you sit and watch the three little flames. The smoke from the lamps rises in thin, dark spirals toward the chimney hole. The smell is thick and heavy, a mix of animal fat and burnt cloth. It coats the back of your throat and makes your eyes water, but you do not mind. The light feels like a warm hand on your shoulder. It chases the ghosts back into the corners. You look at the walls. In the orange glow, the mud chinking looks like dark veins between the pine logs. You see a small spider crawling along a piece of bark, woken up by the heat. Even the spider is a welcome sight. It is another living thing sharing your cave. You watch it move slowly, its tiny legs casting long, thin shadows on the wood. William is sitting near one of the lamps. He is holding a small piece of wood and his knife. In the new light, he has started to carve something. He is not just staring at the wall anymore. The light has given him something to do. You watch his hands move. They are thin and shaky, but he is focused. He is carving the shape of a small horse. You feel a lump in your throat, but you turn away. The grease lamps will only burn for a few hours before you need to add more fat, but for now, the darkness is held at bay. You reach for your mother's Bible. You open the cover, and for the first time in a month, you can actually read your own name written there. The ink is faded, but the light of the horse-fat lamp makes it clear. Elijah Morgan. You are still Elijah. You are still a man from Missouri. You are not just a shadow in a hole. You sit there in the greasy, smoky light, and you feel a tiny bit of peace. The night shift is still long, and the snow is still deep, but you have found a way to see through it. You watch the flames flicker in the draft, and you prepare yourself for the next watch. The light is small, but it is enough. The last of the horse meat is gone. You held the last small bone in your hand this morning, scraping the final bits of gristle away with your teeth until the wood-hard surface was clean. Now the hunger is back, and it is sharper than before. It feels like a living thing inside you, a cold animal with teeth that bites at your stomach every time you move. The supply bags are empty. The flour is gone. The grease in the lamps is low. You look at Jacob and William, and you see the same look in their eyes. It is the look of men who are standing on the very edge of the world. "We have to eat something, Elijah," Jacob says. His voice is a dry rasp like two stones rubbing together. The body needs something to grind on, even if there is no strength in it. You look down at your feet. You are wearing your spare moccasins, the ones you made from thick elk hide back in the autumn. They are stained with dirt and grease, and the soles are worn thin from miles of walking. But they are leather, and leather was once skin. It was once part of a living thing, full of the bits and pieces that keep a body going. You have heard the old-timers tell stories about this at the summer rendezvous. They laughed then, drinking their whiskey, telling tales of eating their boots to stay alive. It seems like a funny story then. It is not funny now. You sit on your bed and untie the leather thongs of your moccasins. You pull them off, and your feet feel the immediate bite of the cabin air. You take your Green River knife and begin to cut the leather into thin strips. You make each strip about the size of your finger. The leather is tough and dry, and it makes a loud protesting creak as the steel bites into it. You have to use all your strength just to push the blade through. Once the moccasins are in pieces, you take your iron kettle. This is your micro-history detail. It is a heavy black pot with 3 small legs and a thick lid. You fill it with snow and wait for it to melt over the small fire. When the water begins to bubble, you drop the leather strips inside. You watch them sink to the bottom. They do not look like food. They look like pieces of a dead tree. A historical fact about the frontier is that leather is made of a protein called collagen. If you boil it long enough for many, many hours, the heat breaks down the tough fibers and turns the leather soft. It does not have much vitamins or goodness in it, but it fills the stomach. It stops the hunger from biting so hard. It gives the men of the night shift one more day of hope. There is a heavy atmospheric silence in the cabin as the pot boils. The smell is not like cooking meat. It is a strange, earthy smell, like wet bark and old smoke. It fills the small space, mixing with the greasy scent of the lamps. You sit by the fire and stir the pot with a wooden stick. You do the same thing for 4 hours. You watch the water turn a murky brown color. You watch the leather strips begin to curl and soften, losing their shape and becoming something like gray, rubbery noodles. When the sun has set outside your snow walls, you divide the leather into 3 tin cups. You give the first one to William. He looks at the grey strips, then looks at his bare feet. He takes a piece and puts it in his mouth. He has to chew for a long time. His jaw muscles jump under his skin. Finally, he swallows. It tastes like nothing, he whispers. Like eating a piece of the cabin wall. You take a bite of yours. It is rubbery and tough. It has no flavor at all. Only the taste of the wood smoke from the fire. It is hard to swallow. Your throat wants to reject it, but you force yourself to eat every bit. You drink the brown water from the pot too. It feels heavy in your belly, a solid weight that tells your brain you are full. The sharp biting in your stomach stops. For a few hours, the animal inside you is quiet. You sit in the dim orange light of the grease lamp, looking at your bare feet. You have eaten your shoes. It is a strange thought. You realize that you are slowly taking yourself apart to stay alive. You are using every tool, every scrap, every memory of life to fight the white death outside. You look at Jacob. He is chewing on his last piece of elk skin, his face set in a hard line. "We're still here, boys," Jacob says, his voice a little stronger. "We're still here." You reach for your buffalo robe and wrap it around your cold feet. You listen to the soft hiss of the kettle. You have no more shoes, and you have no more meat. But you have a fire, and you have your life. You close your eyes and let the heavy, rubbery feeling in your stomach pull you into a dreamless sleep. The watch continues, one boiled strip of leather at a time. The fire is a small, pulsing heart in the center of the room. It is the only thing that keeps the shadows from swallowing you whole. You have finished the moccasins. You have even chewed on the leather ties that held your bags together. Now, your hands search for something else. Anything that once belonged to a living creature. You feel the weight of your trousers, held up by a thick strap of leather. It is your belt. This is not just any belt. It is a piece of home. Your father made it for you in his workshop back in Missouri. He used a piece of heavy cowhide, tanned it until it was dark and strong, and carved a small pattern of leaves along the edges. It was the last thing he handed you before you climbed onto your horse and rode toward the sunset. You have worn it every day for 3 years. It has been with you through the heat of the plains and the freezing water of the beaver streams. It is the last link you have to the farm and the man who taught you how to be a man. You unbuckle it slowly. The brass buckle makes a tiny clink sound that feels loud in the atmospheric silence of the cabin. You hold the leather in your hands. It is smooth and dark, polished by the oil from your skin and the rub of your coat. You can still see the faint lines of the leaves your father carved. You close your eyes and you can almost hear the sound of his hammer on the anvil. You can almost smell the dry hay in the barn. "We have to do it, Elijah," Jacob says. He is watching you from across the fire. He knows where that belt came from. He knows what it means. A man can't eat his memories, but he can eat the leather. You take your awl. This is your micro-history detail for this section. An awl is a sharp, pointed tool with a wooden handle. Usually, you use it to poke holes in leather so you can sew it together. Today, you use it to mark the belt into small sections. You use your knife to cut through the thick cowhide. It is much harder than the elk skin of the moccasins. You have to lean your whole weight into the blade, creak. The leather cries out as the steel divides it. You cut it into squares, each one a little piece of your past. A historical fact about the night shift is that starvation changes how a person thinks. Things that were once precious keepsakes, gifts, beautiful tools become nothing more than fuel for the body. The mind narrows down until there is only the fire and the stomach. You are not a son or a trapper or a friend anymore. You are just a living thing trying not to stop living. You drop the squares into the iron kettle. They splash into the grey water. You sit there for hours, watching them bob and spin in the bubbles. You do not talk. You do not even look at William or Jacob. You just watch the steam rise. The smell of the boiling cowhide is strong and sour. It does not smell like the woods. It smells like a workshop, like old chemicals and salt. When the leather is soft enough to bite, you take your share. You pick up a square of your father's belt. You can still see the edge of a carved leaf on it. You put it in your mouth and you chew. It is thick and tough, like a piece of old wood that has been soaked in water. Your jaw aches. Your teeth feel loose in your gums. But you keep chewing. You swallow the pieces of your father's work and you feel the weight settle in your stomach. The hunger is a terrible master. It makes you take the things you love and turn them into nothing. You look at the brass buckle sitting alone on the dirt floor. It is the only thing left of the gift. You pick it up and put it in your pocket. You will keep the metal at least. You sit back and let the warmth of the leather broth move through you. It is not a good feeling, but it is a full feeling. You realize that you are now made of the things you have eaten. You are made of horse and moccasin and belt. You are a collection of scraps held together by a stubborn heart. You watch the grease lamp flicker. Its light getting lower as the fat runs out. You are in the dark again, but you are still here. The link to home is gone, but the life it brought you is still pulsing in your veins. You close your eyes and try to remember your father's face, hoping that the memory is stronger than the leather. A new sound wakes you. It is not a crack or a moan, but a high, thin whistling. You crawl to the door and push. The snow is lighter today, and as you break through the tunnel, you see something you have not seen in weeks. The sky is not grey. It is a bright, stinging blue. The clouds have been chased away by cold, dry wind. The sun is out, and it is so bright that the light bouncing off the white snow feels like needles in your eyes. You have to squint until your eyes are just tiny slits. The storm is gone, you shout back into the cabin. Your voice is thin, but it is the loudest you have spoken in days. Jacob and William join you. We stand at the mouth of our snow tunnel like animals coming out of a hole. The valley is beautiful and terrible. The snow is so deep that the small trees are completely buried. Only the tops of the tallest pines show, looking like tiny bushes in a white field. But the sun is giving us a gift. On a clear day after a storm, the snow settles. If you are lucky, the top layer freezes into a hard crust. You grab your snowshoes. This is your microhistory detail. These are bare paw snowshoes, rounder and wider than the long thin ones. They are made of ash wood bent into a circle, with a web of rawhide strips. They allow you to walk on top of the deep powder instead of falling through to your waist. You and Jacob decide to hunt. You do not expect to find anything alive, but you are looking for a hump in the snow, a sign of something that did not make it through the gale. There is an atmospheric silence as you walk across the white valley. The only sound is the clack-crunch of the wooden frames on the frozen crust. You carry your rifle, but your hands are so weak you wonder if you could even hold it steady. You walk for an hour, scanning the white mounds. Then you see it. It is a small dark point sticking out of a massive drift near a group of rocks. You walk closer. It is a tip of an antler. You and Jacob begin to dig with your hands and your bone shovels. You work with a frantic energy that you didn't know you still had. Handful by handful, the white powder is thrown aside. 2 feet down, you find brown hair. 4 feet down, you find a solid, frozen body. It is a bull elk. He must have been seeking shelter by the rocks when the big storm hit. The snow piled up so fast and so heavy that it trapped him where he stood. He died of the cold, but the snow has kept him perfect. It is a gift from the mountains. A historical fact of this winter is that scavenging became the only way to live. When the elk and deer could no longer move through the deep snow, they simply stopped. Thousands of animals died this way in 1836. For the trappers, finding one of these ice boxes was like finding a pot of gold. The meat is frozen as hard as a rock. You have to use your hatchet to chip away chunks of the animal. It is slow work, and the ice crystals fly into your face. But as you see the red meat under the hide, you feel a surge of hope. You fill your bags with as much as you can carry. You do not care that the animal has been dead for weeks. In this cold, the meat is as fresh as the day it fell. You return to the cabin as the sun begins to dip. You carry the meat inside, and the smell of the fresh elk, even frozen, changes everything. William looks at the red meat and starts to laugh. It is a dry, shaky laugh, but it is the first happy sound you have heard in a long time. You put a large piece into the kettle. This time, there is no leather. There is only the rich, fatty meat of the mountains. As the pot begins to bubble, you sit in the orange light of your grease lamp. You realize that the clear sky was a message. The mountains tried to kill you with the snow, but now they are feeding you with it. You take a bite of the cooked elk, and the juice runs down your chin. It is the taste of life. You look at Jacob and William, and for the first time, you believe that you might actually see the grass turn green again. The night shift is still cold, but the hunger has been pushed back. You have found a treasure in the white, and tonight you will sleep with a full belly. The smell of the cooking elk meat is thick and heavy inside the cabin. It is a wonderful smell, but it is also a dangerous one. In the mountains, a good smell travels a long way through the cold, thin air. It drifts up through the chimney hole and spreads out across the white valley like an invisible invitation. You are sitting by the fire, watching the grease bubble on a piece of meat when you hear the first sound. It is not the wind. It is a soft, heavy thump on the roof, right above your head. Then you hear the sound of something sharp scratching against the frozen dirt and bark. You go very still. You look at Jacob, and you see that he has heard it too. He reaches out and slowly picks up his rifle, his movements quiet and careful. William is staring at the ceiling, his face gone white again. The scratching sound moves from the roof down to the side of the cabin. It is the sound of long claws digging into the packed snow walls. You realize that the smell of the meat has brought visitors to your door. The wolves are here, and they are just as hungry as you are. You pick up your powder horn. This is your microhistory detail for today. It is made from the hollowed-out horn of an ox, and it is polished until it shines like dark glass. It has a small wooden plug at the end to keep the black powder dry. Every trapper carves his own horn to tell his story. On yours, you have scratched a map of the river and the shape of a pine tree. You carry it on a leather strap across your chest. You carefully pour a small measure of the black powder into the pan of your rifle. You need to be ready. A historical fact about the night shift is that during the hardest winters, the grey wolves would lose their fear of man. When the elk were buried and the rabbits were gone, the wolves would see the smoke from a chimney as a sign of food. They would circle the cabins for days, waiting for a chance to strike. There is a moment of atmospheric silence as you stand by the door. You can hear the sound of your own heart beating in your ears. Outside, the world is perfectly quiet, except for the soft huff of the breath against the wood of the door. You can imagine them out there, grey shadows, with yellow eyes, their ribs showing through their thick fur, their tongues hanging out in the cold. You realize that you are trapped in a small wooden box, and the predators of the mountain are right on the other side of the logs. You hear a low, vibrating growl. It is so deep that you feel it in your own chest. Then, something hits the door with a loud bang. The wooden bar jumps in its sockets, but it holds. The wolves are testing the entrance. They can smell the meat, and they can smell you. You move to the small window and pull back a corner of the deerskin. The moon is bright on the snow, turning the valley into a world of silver and black. You see them. There are 5 of them, moving like ghosts across the white crust. They are large, much larger than any dog you saw back in Missouri. One wolf, the leader of the pack, stands just a few feet from the door. He is almost white, and his fur is matted with ice. He looks up at the window, and for a second, his yellow eyes lock onto yours. There is no fear in his gaze. There is only a cold, hard hunger. He lets out a long, high howl that starts low in his throat and rises until it seems to shake the very stars. The other wolves join in, a chorus of lonely, wild music that fills the cabin and makes your skin crawl. "They won't get in," Jacob whispers, but he keeps his rifle pointed at the door. "The logs are too thick, but we can't go out. Not tonight." You realize that the night shift has become a siege. You are a prisoner in your own home. You look at the elk meat bubbling in the pot. It was a gift that saved your life, but now it has brought the enemy to your threshold. You sit back down by the fire, but you do not put your rifle away. You keep it across your knees, the cold metal of the barrel resting against your skin. You spend the night listening to the scratching and the growling. Every time a wolf moves on the roof, a little bit of dust falls from the ceiling into the fire, making the flames hiss. You think about the cycle of the mountains. You hunted the elk to live, and now the wolves are hunting you for the same reason. It is a hard, simple world where only the strongest and the luckiest see the sunrise. You look at the orange light of the grease lamp, and you pray that the door is as strong as your father's belt. You watch the shadows jump on the walls, and you wait for the morning light to chase the grey ghosts back into the woods. The watch is long, and the eyes in the dark are never closed. The morning light is a thin, grey sliver coming through the chimney hole, but the cold outside is still a sharp blade. The wolves have left the roof, but you can see their dark shapes sitting at the edge of the trees, waiting. You look at your last horse. He is huddled in the small shelter outside the cabin, shivering so hard you can see the wood of the lean-to shaking with him. His ribs are sharp under his winter coat, and his head is hanging almost to the snow. You know that if you leave him out there, the wolves will finish what the cold started. "We are bringing her in," you say. Jacob looks at you, his eyebrows rising. "Into the cabin." "Elijah, there is barely enough room for the 3 of us to turn around." If she stays out there, she dies. If she dies, we have no way to carry our pelts or ourselves out of this valley when the thaw comes. You don't mention the other reason. You don't want to think about butchering another friend. You want something alive to stay alive. You and Jacob move the heavy wooden bar and push the door open. The air hits you like a wall of ice. You walk out into the snow, your rifle held tight, watching the tree line. The wolves stand up, their tails low, watching you. You move quickly to the horse. You have named her Hope. You take her leather lead and pull. She is so weak she stumbles, her hooves sliding on the frozen crust. You lead her through the snow tunnel and toward the narrow door. It is a tight squeeze. Hope is a small horse, but the cabin was built for men, not beasts. You have to push from the back while Jacob pulls from the front. Her warm, furry sides rub against the rough logs, knocking bits of dried mud and moss to the floor. Finally, with a loud huff and a stomp of her feet, she is inside. She stands in the corner where the spare wood used to be, her head touching the low ceiling. A historical fact about the night shift is that trappers often brought their most prized horses or hunting dogs inside their cabins during the worst storms. A horse provides a great deal of animal heat. Because a horse is so big, its body is like a living stove. Having Hope inside actually makes the cabin a few degrees warmer, but it also makes the cabin much smaller and much noisier. You use your curry comb. This is your microhistory detail. It is a small tool with rows of metal teeth and a leather strap for your hand. You use it to brush the ice and dirt out of Hope's coat. The sound of the metal against her hair is a soft scritch, scritch, scritch. It is a peaceful sound. You can see the steam rising from her back as the heat of the fire warms her skin. She nickers softly, a gentle vibrating sound in her chest, and leans her head against your shoulder. Her breath is warm and smells of dry grass. There is a strange atmospheric silence as the three of you sit by the fire with the horse standing just a few feet away. The cabin is crowded now. You have to be careful where you step so you do not get a heavy hoof on your toes. The smell of the room has changed again. Now it smells of horse sweat and wet fur. It is a barn smell, but it is a good smell. It feels like life. She's a good roommate, William says with a tiny smile. He reaches out and pats Hope's nose. The horse nibbles at the sleeve of his coat, looking for a treat that isn't there. You sit on your bed and watch her. You realize that having her inside makes you feel less lonely. The mountains feel a little further away when you can hear the steady thump-thump of a horse's heart and the sound of her chewing on a bit of willow bark. You are all huddled together now, 3 men and 1 horse waiting for the world to turn green. You look at the orange light of the grease lamp reflecting in Hope's large, dark eyes. You feel a sense of responsibility. You have to keep this fire going. You have to keep this cabin standing. You have a passenger now, and she is counting on you to see her through the dark. The month of March arrives, but it does not bring the soft winds of spring. Instead, it brings a storm that makes the earlier snows look like a gentle dusting. It starts with a sound like a distant freight train rumbling through the sky. Then the wind hits. This is the final blizzard, a monster of white and grey that wants to tear the cabin right out of the earth. The wind is so strong that the packed snow walls around the cabin begin to vibrate. You can feel the shaking in your own teeth. Inside, the air is thick and tense. Hope is shifting her weight in the corner, her hooves making loud thuds on the frozen dirt. She tosses her head and lets out a long, nervous whinny. You stand up and put your hand on her neck to steady her. You can feel her skin twitching. Outside, the wind is screaming through the chimney hole, making the fire dance wildly. One moment the cabin is bright with orange light, and the next it is almost black as the wind tries to push the smoke and flames back down the throat of the hearth. You grab your hand axe. This is your microhistory detail. It is a small tool with a sharp iron blade and a short wooden handle. Every trapper keeps one near the door. You use it to split small pieces of kindling, but today you hold it because the sound of the storm makes you feel like you need a weapon. You look at the logs in the wall. A great gust of wind hits the south side, and you see the mud chinking crack and fall away in a shower of grey dust. A tiny jet of freezing white air shoots into the room, hissed like a snake. A historical fact about the night shift is that March was often the deadliest month for the mountain men. Their wood was low, their bodies were weak from months of hunger, and the storms were at their most violent. Many cabins that had stood all winter would finally give way under the weight of the new March snow. You look up at the roof. The poles are groaning under the pressure. You can see the wood bending, the bark ceiling dipping low in the middle of the room. The roof is going to go, William shouts over the roar of the wind. Not today, Jacob yells back. He grabs a heavy spare log from the corner and stands it up under the main roof pole. He hammers it into place with the back of his axe. You jump in to help him, pushing with all your strength to keep the ceiling from falling. You are 3 men and a horse, standing in the dark, physically holding your home together while the mountains try to crush it. There is a moment of atmospheric silence when the wind suddenly stops for a few seconds. In that quiet, you can hear the snow hitting the cabin like a million tiny stones. It is the sound of the world being buried. Then the wind returns with a roar that is louder than before. You stay there, leaning against the support post, feeling the power of the earth pushing against you. You feel very small and very fragile. You think about the farm in Missouri again. You wonder if the apple trees are starting to bud. You wonder if the rain is falling on the soft brown soil. Here, there is only the white and the scream of the wind. You close your eyes and pray to the God in your mother's Bible. You ask for the poles to stay strong. You ask for the door to hold. You ask to see the sun one more time. The storm lasts for 2 days. You do not sleep. You take turns holding the support post and feeding the tiny fire with the very last of your wood. You eat the last of the frozen elk meat, chewing it cold because you do not want to use the heat for cooking. Hope stays quiet in her corner, her head resting on your shoulder as if she knows that you are all in this together. On the 3rd morning, the wind finally dies down to a whisper. You push against the door, but it will not move. You have to dig your way out through the chimney hole, climbing up through the snow like a badger. When you reach the top and look out, you see a world that has been completely erased. There are no trees, no rocks, no trails. There is only a vast, rolling sea of white. But the sun is coming up, and for the first time you feel a tiny bit of warmth in its light. The monster is gone. The final blizzard has passed, and you are still standing. The change begins with a sound you had almost forgotten, the sound of a single heavy drop of water hitting the dirt floor. Plip. Then another. Plip-plop. You look up at the ceiling and see a dark circle forming on one of the log beams. The frozen world is starting to soften. The great thaw has finally arrived. It is not a sudden change, but a slow and steady loosening of the winter's iron grip. The air inside the cabin no longer feels like a sharp blade. It feels heavy and damp, smelling of wet wood and old earth. You push open the door, and this time you do not have to fight the ice. The snow that was once as hard as stone is now soft and grey, like wet sugar. As you step outside, you see the valley is crying. Every tree is dripping. Every rock is shedding its coat of white. The sun as the winter is being replaced by the music of moving water. You can hear the river under the ice, a low, muffled roar that grows louder every hour as the mountain snow melts and rushes down to the valley floor. A historical fact of the spring thaw in the Rockies is that it can be a time of both joy and deep sadness. As the white blanket disappears, it reveals everything that was hidden during the night shift. It is a time when the trappers find the things they lost and the people they lost. You stand on the muddy ground, your boots sinking into the slush, and you watch the world reappear. You walk toward the river with Jacob. The ice bridge is breaking apart. Huge chunks of blue ice, as big as wagons, are snapping off and tumbling into the dark water. They make a sound like thunder crack boom that echoes off the cliffs. As the riverbank appears, you see the remains of the winter. You find a bundle of traps that had been swept away in the first storm, now tangled in the willow roots. You find a leather hat, half buried in the mud, belonging to a man you haven't seen since December. But there are harder things to see. As the snow melts away from the cabins, you find the men who did not make it. You see a pair of boots sticking out from a melting drift near the hot springs. It is Foster, the trapper who went looking for wood and never came back. He is lying exactly where the cold took him, his arms wrapped around himself. The thaw is a cruel mirror. It shows you exactly how close you came to the end. You and Jacob spend the day with your shovels, not for snow this time, but for the earth. You dig shallow graves in the soft, muddy ground, giving your friends a final resting place before the wolves can find them. There is a moment of atmospheric silence as you stand over the last grave. The sun is surprisingly warm on your back. You can see the first tiny tips of green grass pushing up through the black mud. It is a miracle. After months of nothing but white and grey, that tiny bit of green is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. You realize that life is stubborn. It hides and it waits, and as soon as the sun returns, it fights its way back into the light. You go to the horse shelter and lead Hope out into the sun. She blinks her large eyes, looking confused by the bright world. She stretches her neck and takes a long, deep breath of the damp spring air. She finds a patch of grass near a hot spring and begins to eat, her tail swishing for the first time in months. You watch her, and you feel a lump in your throat. You brought her through. You kept the fire going. You shared your warmth, and you made it to the other side. You look at your hands. They are scarred and thin, the skin pulled tight over your knuckles. You look at your canteen. This is your micro-history detail. It is a round tin flask covered in a piece of rough wool. You fill it with fresh, cold water from a place where the snow is melting into a clean stream. The water is so cold it makes your teeth ache, but it tastes like life itself. It is pure and sweet, without the taste of smoke or grease. The night shift is ending. The valley is no longer a prison. It is a gateway. You can see the high passes starting to clear. Soon, Jim Bridger will give the signal. Soon, you will pack your few belongings and leave this place of steam and ice. You look at the cabin, now just a squat log box sitting in a field of mud. It looks small and humble. You think about the nights you spent inside, listening to the wind and praying for the morning. You have survived the deadliest winter in history. You are a different man than the one who rode in here in October. You are harder, quieter, and you know the true value of a warm fire and a piece of bread. You sit on a dry rock and watch the sun go down. It is a long, slow sunset, filling the sky with streaks of pink and gold. The shadows are no longer frightening. They are just part of the evening. You listen to the river roar and the birds sing, and you prepare yourself for the long ride ahead. The thaw has come, and the watch is nearly over. The day to leave has finally come. The valley of the Yellowstone is a different world now. The deep, heavy snow is mostly gone, leaving behind a land of rich black mud and bright green grass. The hot springs are still steaming, but the clouds of white look soft and friendly in the warm morning light. You stand outside the cabin, and for the first time in months, you do not have to pull your coat tight. The sun feels like a warm hand resting on your shoulders. You can hear the sounds of the other men in the brigade. They are shouting to one another, their voices light and full of energy. The long, heavy silence of the winter has been broken at last. You lead Hope out of the cabin. She walks with a steady step now, her coat shiny and her eyes bright. She has spent the last few weeks eating the fresh spring grass, and her strength has returned. You feel a deep pride as you look at her. You saved her life, and now she is ready to carry you home. You lift your saddle, the same one that felt so cold and hard in December, and place it on her back. The leather is supple in the warm air. You tighten the straps, feeling the solid muscle of the horse beneath your hands. You go back inside the cabin one last time. It is empty now. The bed of pine branches is dry and brown. The hearth is cold, the grey ashes sitting quietly in the stone fireplace. You look at the log walls where you and your friends huddle together in the dark. You see the marks William made in the wood, the drawings of the farm and the little horse named Hope. You see the place where you sat and read your Bible by the light of a grease lamp. This small dark box was your whole world for half a year. It was your fortress and your shield. You feel a strange kind of sadness as you walk toward the door. You are leaving a piece of yourself behind in these logs. You pick up your pack saddle. This is your micro-history detail for the end of your journey. It is a wooden frame that fits over the horse's back, designed to carry heavy loads. You lift your bundle of beaver pelts and tie them to the frame with long strips of rawhide. You check the knots twice. These pelts are what you have to show for all your suffering. They are the reason you stood in the ice and the reason you ate your shoes. You hope they will be enough to buy that farm in Missouri. You hope the men back east still want their hats, even if the fashion is changing to silk. A historical fact about the end of the Mountain Man era is that the winter of 1836 was one of the last great years for the fur trade. Soon after, the rendezvous gatherings would stop, and the men of the night shift would have to find new ways to live. Some became scouts for the army, and some became farmers, but they all carried the mountains in their hearts until the day they died. You are part of a history that is slowly fading, like the snow on the lower slopes. You climb onto Hope's back. The movement feels familiar and good. You look over at Jacob and William. Jacob is sitting tall on his horse, his bandaged hand resting on the reins. He looks older, but his eyes are steady. William is riding a new horse he traded from Bridger. He is quiet, but he is looking forward, not back. The three of you have a bond that can never be broken. You have seen the worst the world can throw at a man, and you have come through it together. Jim Bridger raises his hand and lets out a long, loud whistle. It is the signal to move. The line of horses begins to walk, moving slowly out of the trees and toward the southern pass. You follow the river, watching the water sparkle in the sunlight. You see the spots where you set your traps. You see the rocks where you found the frozen elk. You see the mounds of earth where your friends are buried. You tip your hat to them as you pass. You will not forget them. As you ride higher toward the pass, you look back at the valley one last time. The cabins are tiny dots of brown against the green grass. The steam from the springs is a soft white haze. The mountains are big and beautiful and indifferent, just as they have always been. They do not care that you are leaving, and they do not care that you survived. But you know what it costs to stay alive. You know the value of a single match and a scrap of leather. You know the strength that lies in a human heart when it is pushed to the edge. The sun is moving higher in the sky now, warming the trail and the world. The long dark nights of the winter are far behind you. You can feel the rhythm of the horse beneath you, a steady, rocking motion that lulls you into a peaceful state. The air is sweet with the smell of new growth and pine. You are no longer the watchman of the dark. You are a traveler in the light. You think about the green river and the big gathering that is waiting for you. There will be music and laughter and the taste of fresh bread. There will be stories to tell, but you will keep the hardest ones to yourself. Some things are too deep for words. You just want to sit in the sun and feel the warmth on your skin. You want to listen to the birds and forget the sound of the wind. You are safe now. The winter has let go. The hunger has passed. You have your horse, your rifle, and your life. You have a long road ahead of you, but for the first time in a very long time, you are not afraid. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the horse find the way. You feel the sun, you hear the river, and you know that you have made it. The hard watch is finished, and the day has truly begun. The sun is rising, the gates are opening, the watch is ended,